another area, and they have not been able to find them yet. I did talk to DPS. They said they are creating a new staging area. We're still trying to confirm where that is. As soon as we hear from DPS, we'll let you know as soon as we hear from them. I know that is in the works right now because we want to make sure that we can tell these parents something who are just hurting so much right now, trying to find out where their child is at this hour.
We just can't even imagine. And that large truck appears to be possibly a refrigerated morgue that has pulled up next to Robb Elementary School. And if you're just joining us now for Eyewitness News at 5 o'clock, we are covering a horrific story, one of the worst mass school shootings in the U.S. history, the worst in Texas history. 14 students killed today by a lone gunman, an 18-year-old Uvalde resident who walked into Robb Elementary and shot and killed those students and a teacher. And that suspect was killed then by law enforcement. There is the large truck that has just pulled up next to Robb Elementary in Uvalde. And inside Robb Elementary School, dozens of law enforcement and the FBI. DPS has taken over this investigation. They are inside. SAPD has sent units down there, BCSO, as well as all of the neighboring communities around Uvalde, the small community of 16,000. Here we have an aerial shot of Robb Elementary School this afternoon. When we first got on the scene, we heard about this at noon, sent crews right away and had a live picture up shortly after 1 o'clock. We saw law enforcement running inside the school. We now know that is because they had discovered the bodies, additional bodies inside the school. And then we saw school bus after school bus leaving with these second, third, and fourth grade students being evacuated over to the Civic Center. And just a few minutes ago, we saw one of those children. Children are still being picked up from that location.
And we do know 2 people are clinging for their life at University Hospital in San Antonio. We have a 66-year-old woman who's in critical condition and a 10-year-old girl who's also in critical condition. But we want to get back to the Civic Center. We have Victoria De Leon there live. She's been speaking with families who are going to pick up their children. Victoria, you know, I can't even imagine what those parents are going through.
Yeah, Audrey, during that press conference not too long ago, you heard officials saying that parents are still being notified, and that's probably going to be the case for the rest of the day. Here, there have been several parents who have walked into that Civic Center and then had to come back out without their children. There were 2 women here who were waiting here for the past 2 or 3 hours, waiting for their family friend's daughter, who that family has just kind of split up and is looking all over the place for their child. So it is just absolutely heartbreaking here. And again, this Robb Elementary School from 2nd to 4th grade, so some of those youngest kids only 9, 10 years old. We've been here since about 3 p.m. I've seen a handful of people walk out with their children, obviously very devastated, tears running down their faces, many of them holding them very tight, as I'm sure lots of parents and family members are going to be doing for the rest of this day. We're going to be out here for the next couple of hours trying to talk to some more families to get a little bit more insight about what this day has been like. Absolutely devastating. We are, though, being respectful of them during this very difficult time. These stories are going to be coming out over the next few days, weeks, probably even months. So first and foremost, we are going to absolutely respect them and give them their space as they are grieving through something so devastating.
Okay. Thank you, Victoria. Yes, it's just impossible to even comprehend. We have been notified by CBS that President Biden has been told about this tragedy, and he plans to speak this evening when he returns to the White House.
Yes, and earlier today we were speaking about 2 people who are at University Hospital. They were transported to San Antonio, a 66-year-old woman and a 10-year-old girl. There were 2 pending transports, and Henry Ramos did say that he did see a lifeline leaving Uvalde Memorial Hospital, where a lot of those victims were taken. We haven't confirmed whether they have been transported to San Antonio or a neighboring area, but we do know that DPS has taken over that investigation. We know the FBI is there, as well as San Antonio Police, BCSO, but a number of neighboring law enforcement, Hondo, Batesville, Bracketville, all of these neighboring law enforcement agencies have been there all day assisting. Other campuses were released today at regular time, and those parents probably did see some of those law enforcement officers who were just there to ease the minds and hearts of some of those parents at other campuses. But the kids who were there at Robb Elementary School, they were being picked up from that civic center after, and like you just heard from Victoria, a lot of those parents stressed out. They're still looking for their children, still being picked up at 5 o'clock, and this all began around 11:32 this afternoon at Robb Elementary.
And you are looking live right now at Robb Elementary, where this large truck has just pulled up. The Bexar County Medical Examiner has just arrived on the scene in the past 15 minutes. And that appears to be a refrigerated morgue truck. And we are hearing from people. We also have heard from BAMC. That's one of the two #1 trauma centers here in San Antonio, the other one being University Health. BAMC says, we have received 2 adults from the tragic shooting at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas. We don't have conditions to release at this time. So that is a total of 3 adults that we know who are hospitalized, 2 at BAMC, 1 at University Health. 13 children hospitalized at Uvalde, and also 1 child, a 10-year-old, hospitalized here at University Health.
It's a tragic day, a dark day over Uvalde today, and it's going to be a long couple of days because this investigation, we don't know a lot. We do know that the suspect, 18-year-old Salvador Ramos, he was a local there in Uvalde. We learned from Pete Arredondo, the UCISD police chief, that they believe he did act alone, and he was killed by police, responding officers to that active shooter situation that we've learned. A deadly situation. 14 students killed, 1 teacher dead, and of course that suspect was killed as well.
Yes, and then we have 1 student in critical condition, and we don't know the conditions of the other 13 students in Uvalde. And we have 3 adults hospitalized in addition to the 1 teacher who was killed. And there at Robb Elementary School.
Children still being picked up. It's 5 o'clock now, still being picked up from the Civic Center. We also learned that there will be a blood drive tomorrow, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Herbie Ham Center. They are in need of blood there in Uvalde. You can only imagine after this terrible situation, and usually when any sort of critical situation, there is always a need for blood. There's typically a need for blood. So this, if you would like to help, if you're in Uvalde, 9 a.m. to 1, that blood drive will be taking place tomorrow.
And San Antonio's blood bank sent 13 liters of blood to Uvalde today to help out in this crisis. Of course, everyone trying to do all that they possibly can to help everyone in Uvalde, and they are asking for prayers for their community. All of this happening on the last week of school. Children are supposed to get out of school on Thursday. High school students are graduating on Friday. Of course, all of that now up in the air. Again, these are live pictures over, this is from earlier actually, at Robb Elementary School, where police and law enforcement from around the area, EMS units all converged, and school buses.
And we've been hearing stories from families. Henry Ramos spoke to one woman who said her son-in-law actually found out there was a shooting there at Robb Elementary School. He knew what classroom his son was in. He went, he broke the window out, he pulled his son out and started pulling other children out. They ran to a nearby funeral home where they hid until they could safely get away from that scene. And we've been hearing tons of stories like this. We also heard from a grandmother whose grandson was actually
shot
grazed
in the leg. He said it sounded like firecrackers, and they were all hiding, and then he was grazed in the leg. He was hurt. Just terrifying for these children.
And of course, they're going to need a lot of help, a lot of support, and neighboring towns and counties are sending that. We heard from Judge Wolf earlier today. We heard from Mayor Ron Nirenberg. We also heard from Chief McManus, who spoke about what's going on in Uvalde. The President Biden expected to speak this evening as well about this tragedy.
Right. I mean, one of the worst mass school shootings in the nation's history, and the worst one here in Texas. And so, yes, the president will be talking about that this evening. And we already heard from the governor, of course, with his condolences. And we also, I'm sorry, Monica, what is that? Okay. Of course, all of this beginning today, we heard from the police chief there for the school district, who said it was at 11:32 that the 18-year-old walked into that school and began shooting. We don't know what his motive was, what was behind that. We did see a social media post of himself that was up but has now been taken down, just a selfie of this 18-year-old.
Police do believe he acted alone in this situation. You know, they are still notifying families at this time of the deceased. So still a very, very active scene there in Uvalde, both at Uvalde Memorial Hospital and, of course, at Robb Elementary School.
And we have just learned President Biden will deliver remarks on this horrific shooting at 7:15 from the Roosevelt Room. The president just issued a proclamation as a mark of respect for the victims of the senseless acts of violence perpetrated on May 24th, 2022 by a gunman at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. By the authority, the president says, vested in me as President of the United States, by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, I hereby order that the flag of the United States be flown at half-staff at the White House and upon all public buildings and grounds, at all military posts and naval stations, and on all naval vessels of the federal government in the District of Columbia and throughout the United States and its territories and possessions until sunset, May 28, 2022. And I'm reading now the president's remarks. I also direct that the flag shall be flown at half-staff for the same length of time at all United States embassies, legations, consular offices, and other facilities abroad, including all military facilities and naval vessels and stations. That from the President of the United States.
And of course, we will bring you that update this evening when the president speaks. But right now we want to go back to Henry, who's at Uvalde Memorial Hospital, to get an update on those victims. And of course, Henry, you've been speaking to a lot of families there.
Yeah, I have, Audrey and Deborah. In fact, I just do want to just show you of exactly what's happening, and also just give you a quick update of, I just spoke to a husband of a nurse here at the hospital, but just to tell you what's happening, it seems like a lot of the staff here at the hospital is leaving, as well as law enforcement, which we have been showing. But I was actually, I saw a nurse. She had her blue scrubs on. She walked into her car, and as soon as she opened the door of her passenger side, she just started bawling. As soon as she opened the door to her car. And that's, again, what a lot of the medical staff, the doctors, I mean, all the staff here that have been here, that have treated, that have saved lives here today, that have saved the lives of children that showed up here at Uvalde Memorial Hospital. So I spoke with a husband here who, he's just standing here next to his truck, and he showed up because his wife is a nurse here, a day nurse here at the hospital. And I said, you know, I'm sure that your wife has been busy. What have you been able to learn? What have you been able to communicate with her? And he said, I haven't been able to talk to her much, but just via text. And the only thing that she told me is that it was a nightmare. And all the patients that showed up, the children that showed up, she arrived here at 7 this morning, and he said she was supposed to get off earlier, but given the circumstances as to what happened, you know, they stayed here later. And again, with this being such a tight-knit community, we also have to remind ourselves, folks, that these healthcare heroes, these nurses, these doctors, they're saving the lives of people they probably know. This is such a small town. They probably know these children, and that's what makes it even just more difficult, you know, especially for a town like Uvalde. And really, just seeing that, of a nurse leaving her shift today, seeing her in tears as she got into her vehicle. I mean, we've been reporting just in every single corner of this small town in Uvalde. That is the sentiment, the feelings, and it really is hard to describe, folks. I mean, it's not easy for us in terms of showing up to report on something like this. Even back, in the studio with, Audrey and Deborah, this is really tough, especially when it is a community that is so close to where we live, especially when we're talking about children who are just doing what they're supposed to do and going to school and to learn and to celebrate, the end of the school year. All right, so we've been talking about a grandmother that I spoke to who left the hospital, who walked across the street, whose grandson survived. She didn't want to appear on camera, but I did talk to her, and I want you to hear our conversation. Take a listen. Okay, what happened?
My grandson is in 5th grade, and he was shot in the leg. It went through the front, came out the bottom on his upper part. He has just been released, thank you God. It didn't go through any bone, it didn't do any damage, hopefully no nerve damage and stuff, but he was just released, and we thank God for that. We pray for all the children that were taken by this mass murderer, I say. He took a life of a teacher, and all these families are at a loss for everything that's happened. This is a small town, a small community. I know it's going to bring us tighter and closer together. Yeah. I pray for everybody. I do, and I'm so happy that my grandson's fine. He's scared right now. He said he was scared, but he's fine. He just says he remembers it sounded like fireworks going off.
That's what he said.
Yes. He said it sounded like fireworks. He goes, sound like fireworks, Grandma. But
was he just hiding in the classroom?
It was in his classroom. So yeah, just happy to be. I'm happy he's out. It's been a traumatic few hours already waiting and stuff. Because I had gone to the Civic Center because my daughter was waiting for him. Because I called her. I go, there's been a shooting at the school, and she goes, okay. She goes, where? And I said, at Rob. And she's like, oh no, Mom, her son. I said, okay. So she took off over there, and I called her, and she wouldn't answer me. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, he's been shot. And I was like, what? And I took off. I didn't even know where I was driving to. I was like in a fog. I mean, he's the baby. So, but no, he's home. He's gonna go home and rest now.
Yeah. He's in 5th grade?
Yes.
How old is he?
He's 9.
9. Wow. What else did he tell you?
Nothing right now. He said he's just like all the attention he got. We got a picture of him with the officers that walked him out, and she was happy. She cried. She was happy to see him walk out. All the officers and stuff. They were wonderful.
Were they?
Yes, they were awesome that they came together to help this small town, and hopefully we get to the bottom of this, because I know it's not over yet.
No, you don't think so?
Well, there's more threats coming in. There's rumors of the girlfriend making threats and stuff. So we have to be on. Be
ready.
Yes. I don't know if we can ever be ready for something like this, though.
Yeah, you can never be ready.
And right now they're releasing kids, because my other 2 grandkids are in 2 other schools, junior high and middle school, and they're letting them out one by one too, and they're being escorted also. Yeah. But it's scary.
I mean, there you heard it. The words from a grandmother, grateful, extremely grateful that she was able to walk out with her grandson, who actually walked out with police officers here. As you heard, just our conversation there, as she recounted, as I asked her as to what her grandson, 9 years old, what he was able to hear, what he was able to witness, as we've kept saying throughout this afternoon. I mean, you heard it from there, as her grandson told her grandma, it sounded like fireworks, it sounded like firecrackers going off, and she was just praying, and that's what it really is. And if you notice that something very distinctly what she said, and it's something that I want to point out, because it is something, as me being from a small town, this is what it's about when it comes to tragedy, when it comes to something that is unimaginable, that you can't even just really wrap your head around, that we're talking about children who have died, who are no longer here, that were shot and killed at school. It's just so hard to wrap your head around that. And what she said is that when it is times like this that are so tough, that are difficult for us, these are the times that we are stronger, that we come together. These are the times when a lot of people across the nation who have never even heard of Uvalde today, what she wants you all to know that are watching, that are going to see this play out here for the coming days, as we share the heartbreak, as we talk to these families, these grieving families, families and this community who is certainly in mourning right now, that this is a community that's going to come together. This is a community that's going to unite. This is a community that is going to be stronger because of a tragedy. But back here at the hospital, as I mentioned off the top, a lot of the staff here is leaving. You can see this woman in blue scrubs here across the street, and speaking with a husband of a nurse here. He said that his wife is a top nurse here at the hospital. Just via text, all that he would share with me that his wife told him is that it was a nightmare, and dealing with all the several students that were bused here, that were in school buses here, that were taken in ambulances here to the hospital to save lives, to seek treatment. And as I mentioned, I mean, these are the healthcare workers, the nurses and the doctors. This is a small community, so they're treating and they're saving the lives of people that they know. You can see, though, from law enforcement, that aspect, the presence, there's not much out here, but we still have law enforcement still blocking traffic. We still do have family members that I have seen that are arrived as we've been out here and now approaching almost the 6 o'clock hour. Audrey and Deborah.
All right, Henry, thank you very much. We are now joined by Sharon Coe. Of course, we've been on the air here since noon with this horrific story out of Uvalde where 14 students and a teacher have been killed.
Watching this all unfold has been just extremely tragic, extremely tragic.
I'm sure out in the community, I mean, it's all anybody is talking about right now. On the phone with us right now is Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Sierra. Archbishop, I understand you're on your way to Uvalde.
To the hospital and to the church and to the school, and to see how to be present in this very, very terrible tragedy. We are very sad, and we want to be for the people and with the people, and we hope that we will be able to console some, with our presence. Tonight we're going to have 6:30. That means that shortly we're going to open the church, Sacred Heart in Uvalde. Will be open for the public to be able to pray. Anyone who would like to come and pray. We're at 8 o'clock. We celebrate Mass this evening, and we are calling priests and permanent deacons and lay leaders in the area to come to Uvalde to help to people praying, just to be a company. If we need to help them to get something to eat, whatever would be needed that we can do, we'll be very happy to do it. And of course, there is deep pain in many people's hearts at this time.
Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Sierra, when we watch this unfold, it's extremely tragic for us, but I can't imagine for the parents of these children. So what would you say to those parents?
Well, what I will say to the parents is your children or your children are precious and will always be, because they are so present in you, in your minds, in your hearts, in your lives, and to God because of the circumstances, that just to embrace them in the way you can, not in the way you cannot, because it's what we want to do with you, to embrace them in the way we can. And we believe that God will allow us to do it in so horrible situation and so painful time for all of you, not only the Catholic Church, but all the churches, the people of goodwill throughout the country are with you. And we know that it's a very lonely moment for you. It's a very painful moment, and and also with so many emotions. But we just want to say to you, God and all of us are with you and for you at this time.
Archbishop, have you heard from any parishioners in Uvalde, anyone who has lost a child?
No. I heard from the parish that the teacher who also was killed, it seems like she was a former teacher in our school, and many families connected with the people who have died are connected with the parish, with Sacred Heart.
Archbishop, we've been hearing from parents, grandparents about what they're experiencing, what they're feeling, what they're seeing out there. And when we're watching this unfold, we're thinking this is unspeakable evil. So what would you say to give hope to the people who are watching this happen?
Oh, sure. Well, it's very easy to think that way. And we know that evil has to do a lot with death, and that's why our faith reminds us that there is something more beyond death, and that we just celebrated the resurrection, Easter, but what it is also very easy to connect is with our systems. There is a systemic problem in our country, and that death is becoming like a common thing. People are discarded. The value of human life is diminished. The idolatry of guns is so strong. I mean, we have heard just a few weeks ago, Buffalo, and we heard in Houston, and we saw the situation months ago, a year ago in El Paso, in Los Angeles, in Chicago. I mean, daily killings in our own area of San Antonio. Life has been not taken with the dignity that it has. And so I can imagine how easy it's connected that something evil is happening. We don't know, I don't know, the situation and the motives of the individual who did this. But what we can say is there is lack of protection of the human person. And these are children so precious, so valuable. Their families love them dearly. And we do. And I might have known some of them when I had been in Uvalde. I don't know. But we love them. And we hurt. But our systems have to change, in which the person should be the priority, and especially the most vulnerable. In this case, children. But I will not invite people to dwell in the idea of that the evil one is there, because then we can dismiss our responsibilities in bettering the situations of our society, to make a better society wherever we live in. And also with this situation, the responsibility we have to take care of those who are left behind. And in the middle of pain and sorrow and anger, all that is understood. But we all need to take some responsibility. And all of us, we can do something. Even just to have a good thought, or through prayer, to help, not necessarily Uvalde directly, but in other areas where we live, we are prompt, because of all what is going on politically, that is seen, everything is looked through politics, and human beings are forgotten. We don't want to forget them. We don't want to forget these children. We don't want to forget these families and the consequences. And in our environment, wherever we are at, are prompt to provoke this. And arms are everywhere. I mean, how? How we're going to protect the human person in time of need?
Thank you,
So,
Archbishop. No,
this
that's so uplifting, Archbishop. And I know you're on your way to Uvalde right now. You're going to Sacred Heart Church, and you're opening that up for everyone to come and pray?
at 6:30.
At 6:30?
And then at 8 o'clock tonight will be a mass.
All right, Archbishop, thank you so much, and travel safely, and thank you for joining with us.
God bless you, Deborah. Bye.
God bless you.
We now turn to Victoria De Leon, who is at Robb Elementary School. And Victoria, is there any new developments you can share with us?
Hey Sharon, we're actually 5 minutes away from the elementary school at the Willie De Leon Civic Center. This is where earlier today parents were directed to pick up some of the students from Robb Elementary. Now, just a few moments ago, a district spokesperson texted and said that all students have been picked up. I'm still trying to clarify whether she means all students from the Civic Center have been picked up, because in the last few minutes we've still seen a few parents walk in and there are still a few families sitting on some of the chairs. It seems like they are waiting to hear from some of their students. So I'm not sure if that means that all students from the Civic Center have been picked up or all students from Robb Elementary are now home, but it's something that we're trying to clarify. But more than just families, it's also just community members from Uvalde who have come here to just try to see what they can do to help. A few moments ago, a man was here asking where he could donate blood. Now, I did see that they're holding a blood donation drive at the Herbie Ham Activity Center tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. We've also seen some people here coming in with water and snacks for those family members. We've been able to talk to some people off camera, understandably so. They are just not in a place right now to give interviews, and we of course want to be respectful of that. The word that I just keep hearing over and over again is just shock, heartbreak, disbelief. There's a lot of pain here in Uvalde tonight, and we're going to continue to be following this story over the next coming days. We are learning that there might be a prayer vigil, so we're going to try to head over there as soon as we can. Sharon.
Thank you, Victoria. It's great to hear that the community is coming together and truly living the word community, helping these families, helping these parents, and parents are reuniting with their kids.
Yes, and everyone praying there. And as we just heard from the Archbishop, at 6:30, they're opening the doors at Sacred Heart Church there in Uvalde for everyone to come and pray. And of course, the people reacting around the country. President Biden has lowered all of the flags at half staff. And other officials also reacting. Zach Brigg has been speaking with them.
In San Antonio, Mayor Ron Nirenberg tweeting, "Uvalde is experiencing the sickening aftermath of a horrific mass shooting. Pray for the lost, their families, and Uvalde." He also notes San Antonio has sent mass casualty resources to Uvalde. Well, Senator Ted Cruz says he and his wife are fervently lifting up in prayer the children and families in the horrific shooting in Uvalde. Well, thank you to heroic law enforcement and first responders for acting so swiftly. Meanwhile, President Biden has been briefed on the shooting at Robb Elementary, according to the White House press secretary. He's expected to speak on the incident this evening. Zach Briggs, KENS 5.
Okay, let's now go to Vanessa Croy, who is live at Robb Elementary School. And Vanessa, what can you tell us?
San Antonio Fire Chief Charles Hood just arrived on the scene. He's walking with what we're assuming could be families. They've been sitting here for a while waiting to find out what happened, where their children are. We've seen many families come out here in the last hour and a half asking where are our children? We've been to the Civic Center, we've been to the other staging area in town, and we just want to know where our child is. I know these families have been waiting around, and Chief Hood just walked up with some DPS state troopers to escort those families to the front of the school. We don't know exactly where they're going or what they're doing, but he just arrived here. We have seen multiple law enforcement, EMS crews from all over this area and starting to see all over the state. Texas Department of Emergency Management is out here. San Antonio SWAT team has been out here, as well as these neighboring counties. The first responders to be on the scene today to support Uvalde Police and Uvalde County Sheriff's Office, both small departments who are dealing with a lot of other things in this community right now, all rushing to the school. I did talk to a few of the sheriffs in these neighboring counties who said they immediately sent what short-staffed EMS crews they had from Valverde, from Kenny County, from Medina County to head out here and help the first responders on the scene, in addition to DPS and Border Patrol, who it's very important to understand, the state and federal agents, but all part of these communities, these border communities in this area. You can see behind me, the scene is still very active. We have been asked to move on this side of the street before we were right in front of the school. They did pull up what appears to be, we're not exactly sure, they haven't come out and tell us yet, but we know this is Texas Department of Public Safety. Texas Department of Emergency Management is also here as well. I did talk to law enforcement earlier, county officials who said they're just trying to notify these families. Some of the families, as we've seen out here, are just wondering where their children are at this hour still today. Now, we do know behind the school, off to the side, is what looks like where the command post is, where the focus of that investigation is in the back of the school. But once again, they have set this up here. They have continued to barricade off this perimeter of the school, and we've been asked to stand over in this area at this time. We're still waiting to find out if there is another staging area for families to go. DPS said they were working on that with the sheriff, so we're still waiting to find that out right now.
All right, Vanessa, thank you. Just heartbreaking to watch those families walking into the school there with Chief Charles Hood. Well, we want to let you know it's at 5:33. If you're just joining us, what we've been following all day today, at 11:33, a gunman, an 18-year-old Uvalde resident, walked into the elementary school there, Robb Elementary School, with a handgun and possibly a shotgun, and just opened fire, killing 14 students and one teacher. The school houses 600 students in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. 13 students were taken to the hospital there in Uvalde Memorial Hospital. A 10-year-old and a 66-year-old woman were taken to University Health. They are both in critical condition. 2 other adults are being treated at BAMC. We do not know their condition. The gunman was shot and killed by law enforcement on the scene in the worst mass shooting in Texas history and one of the worst in our country's history.
And of course, the community is coming together to help as much as they can, at what they can. Leaders, 13 liters of blood have been sent to that
13,
area.
yes,
13. To that area, to the district. Troy Kless is live at the blood bank with more on the donations. Troy.
Yeah, Sharon, we actually did learn those donations increased in the afternoon. So initially there were about 15 units of blood that were sent 28 minutes after they got the call about the events that unfolded in Uvalde. They sent them to the Uvalde Memorial Hospital. And then later this afternoon, 10 additional units of blood were sent. So that's 25 total. And in speaking with the South Texas Blood and Life Center earlier this afternoon, they say that's one of the best ways to help in the immediate aftermath for the victims of this shooting. So we did talk with one man earlier today who his blood will likely be going to assist with the victims tomorrow, by as early as tomorrow, in 24 hours after the shooting. So again, for anyone else that might be interested in wanting to help out, there's several ways you could do it, not just here in San Antonio, but also in Uvalde. So in Uvalde, tomorrow morning from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Herbie Ham Activity Center, they're going to be holding an emergency blood drive there where anyone of any blood type can arrive. But again, you don't have to be local to Uvalde to help out. You can go to any one of the blood donation centers here in San Antonio in order to assist. You want to go to southtexasblood.org. Again, that's southtexasblood.org, and you can find the center that's closest to you, and that way you can go to donate. Now, this is one of the first times that they've had to respond to a shooting like this, but we just mentioned earlier that it was within 45 minutes they were able to load up a supply of blood, getting on a helicopter, and get it to the hospital where they were treating the victims there. And again, it can take just a day in order for your donation to be turned around, tested, and be sent off to that response as well. So again, like we were just mentioning, 25 total units have been donated from the South Texas Blood and Life Center. So far, they are on standby to see if they need to send any additional supply. But as of right now, and because of several other factors, their supplies have been pretty low recently. But all the more reason for people to come down here and donate, or again, go to your nearest blood donation center. Again, check out southtexasblood.org. Again, southtexasblood.org if you want to donate and help the victims recovering from the horrific events over in Uvalde. Sharon?
Thank you, Troy. Yes, I know people just want to know, what can we do to help? And this is a wonderful thing you can do. In addition to prayers, go and give blood. Now, Henry Ramos has been in Uvalde all day. He has been at the hospital there, Memorial Hospitals, talking to families. Let's go to Henry live. Henry?
Hi, good evening there, Sharon and Deborah. Just again, I've been talking about what we've been seeing out here, the sentiment, the feelings, the heartbreak. I mean, we just saw a woman just pull up right next to our camera, and she just opened her door and she just started crying hysterically out loud. And I wanted to give her space, and then she walked in with someone holding hands, and they walked into the hospital. I mean, we still have loved ones here still showing up to the hospital. I've actually reached out to them to see if there is a new update in terms of the number of patients, the care, but I haven't received word. And the only thing that we do have to recap for you is that we do know that 13 children from Robb Elementary were sent ambulance by bus, were sent here to the hospital, and then 2 children were taken to San Antonio. And we do know that 2 individuals that arrived here unfortunately lost their life. And I had spoke to a family from San Antonio who told me that one of those 2 that died was a 10-year-old little girl from the elementary school. They told me that hours ago and confirmed to me that she was 10. She went to Robb, and she was taken here, and she died, and her mother was here with her. But what we have been noticing is a lot of the staff here is leaving. I mean, I've just, even speaking to just some of the husband of the nurse, it just, you have to think about this other side of it. I mean, there are so many families, this whole community is impacted here because of this tragedy. But we also have to remember the healthcare workers, the nurses and the doctors and the staff here at this hospital, which serves 5 counties. This is the hospital where people go to. People were still even showing up to their doctor's appointments when I was walking up to them. So you also have to think about that. And then you have to deal with this kind of mass casualty event here when you have so many of their community, their loved ones, some of them their family members and friends showing up to them, and then they're treating them. Something else that I know that did arrive was STRAC, and it was the mass casualty bus with San Antonio Fire. I know I heard my colleague Vanessa Croy mention that San Antonio Fire Chief Charles Hood is here, but the STRAC bus is also here and has since and has been here for quite some time here at the hospital, obviously providing aid. They do respond to these types of situations when we are dealing with so many people that are injured, obviously so many people that have died, lives that have lost, children that are no longer here. So we know that there is so much aid that is arriving here to help here on the healthcare front. Obviously, as we just heard from Troy about the blood donation, because that is the next big thing that the hospital does need. We did mention to you all about the grandmother who had left the hospital, whose grandson was able to walk out. He was grazed in his leg. A 9-year-old saying it sounded like fireworks as he was hiding in the classroom. So scary for a lot of these children, not knowing what was happening. It was just the last week of school almost wrapping up on Thursday, but he was able to walk out of here. He was able to survive. I do know that the hospital apparently was supposed to have a a board of directors meeting. That has since been canceled. The hospital here in Uvalde is updating everyone publicly on its social media pages, and its last update, besides me reaching out to them, was probably about 30 or 40 minutes ago, and it was pushing the blood drive that Troy had mentioned, of course, that being tomorrow at the Herbingham Activity Center parking lot. It's from 9 a.m. to 1. Extremely important if you can. And exactly right, Deborah, for those that we don't know what to do, of course, this community says offer prayer. They need all the prayer that they need. They need to be lifted up, as a lot of families, a lot of heartbreak. But the other thing that we can do, if you can, is donate blood, and that's happening from 9 to 1. And the thing is, you don't have to pre-register to donate blood, and you can certainly save a lot of lives with that. But we have seen a lot of the law enforcement here that was blocking the hospital has since left, but there still are loved ones that are still showing up. And of course, I do want to remain respectful, because this is what makes our job extremely difficult in rushing up to these families and trying to get the insight to provide you the latest information as well as accurate information. But we do have to be respectful. We are human, and we understand that they're hurting, and there's so much uncertainty unknown as to what they're going through right now. So we are here with them. We are here for you to keep you updated. As soon as I hear more or gain any more new insight from anyone here in this parking lot, of course, we'll make sure to bring it to you, Sharon and Deborah.
All right, Henry, and for people who are just joining us, will you share the story of the grandmother you spoke to, where her son-in-law went over to rescue his son?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so that was I actually interviewed her in the car on the way here, and Mary is she's a KINS 5 viewer. She lives here in Uvalde. We're friends on Facebook, and I saw that she just kept posting, and so I'd reached out to her, and she told me her son, JJ, attends Robb Elementary, and so we were able to chat as she was outside her home. She lives very close to the elementary, so she was hearing at least the action from the law enforcement side as you had all the choppers flying over. Obviously, as Vanessa had mentioned, we have Border Patrol and so many agencies here. But she was also mentioning that her grandson, JJ, goes there. He was in the classroom. As soon as her son-in-law, JJ's dad, heard that there was a shooting at the school, he rushed to the school, right? As a father, as a parent, you've got to make sure that your child is safe. He went there. He knows the classroom where his son is located, and was able to get children and his son out of the window. I mean, just pulling them out of the window, and that's how they were able to run to safety. I was told they ran to a funeral home that was near Robb Elementary, and there they were able to seek refuge there for a while. But those are the kind of stories that we're hearing, Deborah, these stories of survival. But, as Mary had mentioned to me, she's like, it's not in a million years, Henry, would I ever think that we would be seeing this unfolding in our small town, a town who loves, a town who's united. And especially on a day where these kids were getting certificates. I mean, it's the end of the school, and I keep saying that, but that just gives you perspective, folks, the context as to the joy that these students were facing, as well as learning, but also looking forward to the summer. But, and the same message that the grandmother Mary has been mentioning is that she just asked that while this is truly devastating, that she just asked for prayers for everyone.
Right, very powerful, and thank you, Henry. We were speaking with Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Sierra just a little bit ago, and he's on his way to Uvalde to offer prayers and comfort families. And at Sacred Heart Church, 6:30, they'll be opening the doors to everyone there to pray.
And you know, Deborah, when I hear the story from Henry and what he had said earlier, I'd love to underscore that. You know, what can we do to help? I think that comes to mind. We feel almost helpless when something like this happens. He really talked about the healthcare workers. They are working tirelessly to help these children, to help these folks. Troy Kless, who was live at the South Texas Blood and Tissue Center, talking about the generosity of the community. And Deborah, I know that you have donated. I've donated blood. It's painless. It's quick.
Right.
It's really easy, and that can go a long way and can help tremendously. So let's now go to Alicia Nieves, who is at Uvalde. And Alicia, what can you tell us?
There's a new staging area for the media now, Sharon. Instead of the Civic Center right down Main Street, we are a little bit further away, about a 3-minute drive to the Uvalde County Fairplex, right outside the Uvalde County Event Center. As soon as we pulled up, we saw 3 county workers walk behind me to go and lower the flags to half-staff. It was a directive by President Joe Biden to remember the lives lost of the 14 students and 1 teacher at Robb Elementary. After one of the workers, after they completed their task behind me, you know, I asked him, you know, how are you doing? I am so sorry, you know, for your community. And he says, you know what, it's still shocking, he says, because I'm from here. And he said that he was working the scene earlier today as an emergency responder. And he said that it just hasn't sunk in. You know, he's still in just, I guess, the adrenaline rush of everything, the shock of reading and finding out about what happened and working that scene. I'm sure, ladies, you can imagine how extremely tough that was. And he was telling me about how his wife, or he has a child in pre-K, and his wife went to go pick up the child at about noon. So you have parents, my point is, who have been waiting about 5 hours already to pick up their child from another school within Uvalde Consolidated School District. So it is just, like Henry was mentioning, unfathomable to imagine this happening anywhere. And in Uvalde, you know, relatively quiet city, it is just hard to sink in, especially for the people who were born and raised here. So we are once again outside of the Uvalde County Fairplex, and we are hearing from other journalists there's a possibility of another press conference. You have the governor who is in Abilene today, and he can get here pretty quick if he maybe plans to do a press conference. That is one possibility, but the school district says that they are going to keep all parents updated on their social media pages. You have them very active on Twitter. You have the police department very active on Facebook as well. So as soon as we get word of any press conference, so we can bring you all new information, I'll pass that along as soon as I can.
All right, Alicia, thank you. And we now want to go back to Robb Elementary, where Vanessa Croy has been all afternoon. Vanessa?
Well, Deb and Sharon, we have just learned that one of the Border Patrol agents that responded to this shooting today was somehow struck with gunfire. We are hearing that our law enforcement sources are telling us this information. They are telling us that that agent is okay today, that he was thankfully not seriously injured. And once again, he was just one of many law enforcement officers that responded to this shooting today. I'm going to step out of the way and show you what's happening right now. We've seen families coming out here in the last hour or so trying to find their child, trying to figure out what exactly has happened. They had we saw frustrated families before that, just wanting to know where to go. We also saw San Antonio Fire Chief Charles Hood. He got here probably about 45 minutes ago and was escorting some of those families into the front of the school. Can't imagine what they're facing when they enter the doors of that campus.
Like we just lost Vanessa Croy's live feed, but we do have a statement from Senator John Cornyn, and he says, "My heart goes out to those in the hospital receiving care and to the loved ones of those who lost their lives. As a parent, I cannot imagine the pain they must be feeling. I am in touch with local officials in Uvalde and plan to travel there as soon as I can get there."
And the Red Cross said in a statement, quote, The thoughts and deepest sympathies of the entire American Red Cross family are with the people of Uvalde and those affected by this tragic shooting. The Red Cross and its volunteers continue to coordinate our efforts with the Department of Public Safety, the City of Uvalde, and Uvalde County to assist family members of the victims. We appreciate the outpouring of support of community members reaching out to the Red Cross to offer their help during this challenging moment. At this time, we have all the resources and assistance we need. We will continue to coordinate with local officials and community partners to determine how we can best support the Uvalde community in the days and weeks ahead. End quote.
And we are expected to hear from President Biden, who is going to address the nation, who is going to speak to all Americans about this tragedy and what happened.
At 7:15 tonight. Yes, you know, Uvalde is known, of course, as the hometown of Governor Dolph Briscoe, of Matthew McConaughey, and now, unfortunately, it's going to be known for this terrible mass shooting at an elementary school. Robb Elementary, with 600 students, second, third, and fourth graders there. And a gunman just walked in today and just started shooting.
Governor Greg Abbott sharing and confirming 14 students have died. One teacher has died in this shooting. He shared with us that the shooter acted alone. An 18-year-old Uvalde resident who came with a handgun, possibly another rifle, another weapon of some kind. The governor saying that has yet to be confirmed, but possibly another weapon.
And we do know a 66-year-old woman is in critical condition here in San Antonio. 2 other adults are in BAMC. We do not know their condition. We just heard from Vanessa just moments ago. A Border Patrol officer who responded to the scene was wounded in the leg, shot in the leg. And then we know 13 students were taken to the hospital there in Uvalde, and a 10-year-old girl is in critical condition here at University Health.
We've seen an outpouring of law enforcement support ever since the shooting started around 11:30, around noon. Again, at Robb Elementary School, we've seen at the FBI, Uvalde Police, Bexar County Sheriff's Office, San Antonio Police. We saw early a few minutes ago the San Antonio Fire Chief going in there, walking with families, walking with community members. Of course, DPS has taken over as a lead in this investigation as this continues.
Yes, and still an active crime scene there at Robb Elementary School, surrounded with crime scene tape. We did watch as people were walking in there. I can't imagine the scene in there. Vanessa Croy told us DPS officers and other officers were leaving with tears in their eyes earlier today. Let's go back to Vanessa live at the scene.
We are here back live at the scene. I've been here since around 1 o'clock this afternoon, before they even had all these streets blocked off today. But you can see now the scene is still very active. The investigation is still very active. We just saw San Antonio Fire Chief Charles Hood get out here and escort some of what we believe to be the families into the front of the school just a few minutes ago. We've seen families come out here the last hour wondering where their children are. They had been to the other staging areas and at a loss of what to do now. So in addition to our San Antonio fire department and police, we also have all the local law enforcement out here as well from surrounding counties supporting Uvalde Police and Uvalde County Sheriff's Office. The weather is getting pretty windy out here as the investigation goes on. Most of the investigation is focused behind the school. That's where it looks like a staging area is set up. We did see more law enforcement out there this afternoon, but we have seen FBI here today. DEA, as well as the FBI Crime Scene Investigative Unit, is here as well out here right now. So you can still see they have all these streets blocked off in this area, and we're hoping to get some more information soon out here.
And law enforcement officers will be there for hours. Audrey is back here in studio with us.
Yeah, it's still a very active scene there. Like we just heard from Vanessa, one Border Patrol agent who did respond to that scene was injured during that active shooter situation, but luckily he is going to be okay. That's some good news there. But right now we want to go to Victoria De Leon, who is at a local church that is getting ready for a service there. Victoria.
Right. Hey, Audrey, this is the Getty Street Church of Christ right off of Getty and Main Street, just 3 minutes away from Robb Elementary School. Now, they will be out here until 7:30. They expected it to start around 5:30, and I think they're just waiting on people to come and start trickling in. We did just see maybe 2 cars pull up. That prayer vigil is going to be inside of the church. The outreach minister I just talked to, his name is John, says he used to be a substitute teacher at the high school. And this is just an absolutely heartbreaking for him, as well as all of the families involved and just really the entire Uvalde community. This, of course, was just a very last minute thing. He says even if one person shows up to this prayer vigil tonight, because we know there will probably be a couple happening, if just one person shows up, he's going to be here to offer his support and his prayers. It's definitely something I think the community could really use tonight, just being together with other people who are hurting. So we'll be out here for a couple more hours and talking to people who end up showing up to this prayer vigil, and we'll keep you updated with the latest.
Victoria, there at the Church of Christ that is getting ready for a vigil tonight. Of course, the whole community wanting to come together during such a hard time, but you know, that's what happens a lot, right? People just want to wrap their arms around each other and pray and just come together.
Yeah, and we had heard earlier from Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Sierra. He really shared a message of hope and really prayer. I think that can go a long way. I think sometimes when things like this happen, it can be trivial to some people, but I think especially with this community, they need that and they need your help. And if you physically want to do something too, we had also heard from Troy Kless at the South Texas Blood and Tissue Center, you can certainly donate to make a difference.
And right now we want to go to Alicia Nieves, who actually moved over to a different location, a new staging location for media. Alicia, those flags behind you flying at half staff.
As directed by the President of the United States, you saw on Twitter earlier, guys, that the President has been briefed about what happened here, and he has spoken with Governor Greg Abbott and is offering any assistance. When we pulled up here at our new location, it was maybe about half an hour ago, we saw county workers begin to lower the flags just in memory of the lives lost. And we've been talking about this since we've been on the air, about how this kind of thing just does not happen in Uvalde. We work Sutherland Springs, ladies. We have heard about these cases across the United States, and then when it hits home, it hits hard. And the county worker who has a child in pre-K, he is from here, and he just told me earlier after he finished lowering the flags that it's just hard news to settle in. He hasn't accepted it yet, as I'm sure many other people haven't either. So you have parents who are likely still waiting to pick up children tonight at different campuses. I heard about parents who had a child in pre-K who were waiting for about 5 hours to pick them up from school. And so we are hearing all of the updates on social media from the school district. I just reached out to school officials to see if they are going to be doing another press conference here at the Fairplex, which is where we were relocated. We were previously at the Civic Center, and we are still waiting to hear back. You can see it's windy. It looks like it's really about to start pouring here in Uvalde. So if they do have a press conference, we are being directed inside, and we are just waiting on word to see when that will be. But once again, the district has been very communicative on social media, on Twitter and Facebook, the police department as well. So we have post notifications turned on, and we will keep you updated as soon as we hear if they plan to release any new information. Hopefully that will come sooner rather than later. I mean, in conversations with people today, you know, they're saying there are just more questions than answers at this point. Lots of people want to know the motive. Lots of people want to know, why would someone like this, why would someone target children? The innocent lives lost, and it is just hard to comprehend. So once again, I will keep you ladies posted if we hear anything new.
Thank you so much, Alicia.
And you can see behind her, flags are lowered in honor of those 14 children and teacher who died.
It's now 6 o'clock, and if you're just joining us, we have continuing coverage of a mass shooting out of Uvalde. So we want to go over what we've learned so far today. Pete Arredondo, the UCISD police chief, gave us a brief statement. He said this all began around 11:32 a.m. at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. Now, that's a 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade campus. And we learned that the suspect entered that building possibly with one gun, maybe two. Suspect identified as Salvador Ramos, an 18-year-old Uvalde local. While in there, he shot at students and teachers. We learned that 14 students died, 1 teacher died. Police were able to take down that shooter, who they say later they believe was acting alone in this. Families are still being notified. Several students were transported to Uvalde Memorial Hospital. We also had 2 people transported to University Hospital in San Antonio, a 66-year-old woman in critical condition, a 10-year-old girl in critical condition. And we also learned that there are 2 adults who were also transported to BAMC, one of the other hospitals that was allowed to take some of those transports from Uvalde Memorial. Now, just recently, a reporter at the scene there at Robb Elementary School, we learned through Vanessa Croy that there was a Border Patrol agent who also was responding to that location, to that active shooter situation. That Border Patrol agent was injured, but they say he is going to be okay. So some good news there. There still was parents picking up students as of 5 o'clock earlier. It's now 6. They are still notifying parents, so we still are waiting for a lot more information. We also know the Church of Christ is going to be holding a prayer vigil shortly. That's coming up here in just a bit. And also, if you would like to help, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. tomorrow, there will also be a blood drive at Herbie Ham.
And speaking of blood drive, Audrey, Troy Kless has been at the South Texas Blood and Tissue Center talking about the donations that have been coming in. 25 liters of blood have been sent to the district, to the area in Uvalde. He joins us live. Do we have him? There we go. Troy, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Sharon. Well, while we were here earlier today talking with the South Texas Blood and Life Tissue Center about the donations, there was one man that we spoke with that his blood could likely go to assist as well. The center is currently on standby to send additional blood, but like you mentioned, Sharon, 25 units have been sent so far. 15 were sent in the initial aftermath and the response to the shooting there, and then 10 were sent later in the afternoon. And again, it's a critical component to the response for a traumatic event like this. We were talking with the Blood and Tissue Center, and they say they have a program called Brothers in Arms that provides blood in situations like this. And again, you can go to southtexasblood.org if you want to donate. And again, we have that donation that's going to be coming up tomorrow in Uvalde, like you mentioned as well. Back to y'all.
Thank you, Troy. We know that one donation can save 3 lives.
Absolutely. Well, right now we want to get over to Henry Ramos. He's been at Uvalde Memorial Hospital, which took a lot of the injured there. Henry, I see you have someone joining you right now.
I do, Audrey, and please bear with us because the wind, these gusts are certainly picking up, so I apologize if it's a little bit difficult. But, oh my goodness. Oh my God, are you okay? Okay, I'm so sorry. Please bear with us, folks. Hopefully this wind will pass. I'm so sorry. So go ahead, and for everyone that's watching, why we're meeting today, because your niece, who is more like a daughter, attends Robb, and she's missing right now.
Correct. Yes. Her name is Ileana Torres. If anybody knows where her whereabouts, please contact my sister. Her number is 830-279-8358. Her name is Sandra Torres. We are in disbelief of this tragedy that happened, and we have not yet gotten any answers of where her whereabouts are at. And please, if anybody has any news on her, any hospitals that have any information on her, please reach out to us and let us know that she is at y'all's facility, and just praying for a safe return home.
So you came here to the hospital here to see if she was here, and how long were you here? And you said that process, the way that they were identifying was tough.
Yeah, it was tough. They would ask you for a picture, just a picture, the description of what they were wearing this morning, and it was hard. They did take my sister to the back to identify, thinking it was my niece, but it wasn't my niece.
So she's not at the Civic Center nowhere? Like, no. I mean, you have no idea?
We have no idea. And it's not like her. It's not like my niece not to reach out, because when she feels that she's threatened or scared, she's always calling on her cell phone. She'll blow up somebody until somebody answers her. And up to right now, to this minute, we have not gotten one phone call from her. And her phone is off.
What's going through your mind is you're trying to make sense of, to find where your niece, who's more like a daughter for you, who's 10 years old, who was at Rob this morning, and then making sense we have 18 children died today. I mean, what's kind of going through your mind right now as you live in this town?
Well, it's 14 plus, because
right.
They're dying as, I guess, they're working on them. I'm just praying that my little one is okay. I believe in the power of prayer, and I believe that I want to tell myself that she's okay, and I'm going to keep telling myself that she's okay and she's going to come home.
Can you show us a picture of her real quick, so that way, and you have her on her, and you said, we've been saying, if you can kind of zoom in there, Irissa, that this was the last week of school. She had a softball game today. She's a fourth grader. She was looking forward to school, ending.
She was very excited about her softball game today. She was kind of nervous. I talked to her last night, and she was kind of nervous, stating that it was her last game and she didn't want softball to end. And she was excited because they were gonna, I guess, announce the ones that made it to All-Stars. And she was also saying, like, what if I make it? I'm gonna be so nervous. And I was like, girl, you got this. You're gonna be good at it. You got this. So she was excited about her game today.
And is that the last time you spoke with her as of right now?
It was the last time that I spoke to her was yesterday.
For people that are watching, and people all across that are watching, when they're hearing Uvalde and they're hearing the tragedy and the children and the lives lost, what do you want them to know about this town, and as we try to all kind of make sense of this with you all right now?
Well, all law enforcement is doing what they can and what's expected, and just for the safety and for everybody, and wanting everybody to hopefully they find their loved ones. That's all I can say. I hope they find their loved ones.
And for you, we hope the same. So where do we go next?
Next, well, we're headed out to the Civic Center.
Keep looking.
Where the waiting starts there as well.
Will you please keep us posted?
Sure.
Okay. Stay strong. Is there anything else you'd like to add? We appreciate your time.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Be safe. I mean, and that was kind of echoing, as you heard there live, same what Vanessa Croy was saying, is that a lot of family members, showing up to Robb Elementary even there, still not being able to find their loved ones. And you have loved ones that are showing up here to the hospital, trying to see if they're here. And you heard that, this couple, talking about the fourth grader, their loved one, they've been here for hours. It's a process as loved ones are showing up, not knowing if their loved one is here at the hospital, if they're being treated, if they didn't make it. We know that two people that arrived here didn't make it. I do know that one of those was a 10-year-old. And as you heard, it's tough. They're asking them questions. What were they wearing when they went to school today? Can you have a picture? Let's identify them. There's so many different stories out there, and it's tough hearing that, because it's so much much worry, and it's hard to wrap your head around that, to even get families like that, loved ones, to talk about the heartache and the pain and the unknown and the uncertainty. And every single one of these people out here have their own story. It's not just like the grandmother that I interviewed hours ago, who was fortunate enough that her 9-year-old grandson, who was a student there, was grazing the bullet. He was able to walk out, which it is great. And I don't want to diminish that, but we also have to remember, folks, that there are a lot of people out there at this time that have either are mourning the loss of their loved one, or there's so much uncertainty that they still can't even find him at this hour. And here we are, the 6 o'clock hour. And so that, just to give you some context there, we'll send it back to you.
We wish that family the best, and we hope that they can locate their niece.
Yeah, a lot of heartbreaking uncertainty, heartbreaking mystery, unfortunately. And we have just learned that President Biden spoke with Governor Greg Abbott to give him any assistance that he needs.
Absolutely. And right now we want to go to Vanessa Croy, who is at Rob's Elementary School. She's been there all afternoon. Vanessa, any update from that scene?
Well, first of all, Audrey, that family that Henry was just talking to, that's a heartbreaking reality for many families out here. We've seen parents, other family members coming out here asking law enforcement on the scene, how do we find out where our children are? They had been everywhere else in town they could think of and returned here trying to find their children. I'll give you a look behind us, what's going on right now. We just saw FBI agents walk towards the front of the school. We don't know if the investigation has actually moved, the part of it has moved to the front of the school, but we have seen San Antonio Fire Chief Charles Hood escort some families in the front of the school. Can't imagine what they're facing when they enter those school doors today. And I talked to the sheriff on my way out here earlier today, and all he could tell me, couldn't even give me the details of what was unfolding inside. It was right after they somehow took down the suspect that he said, this is absolutely horrific. He said, our worst nightmare has come true. And I can tell you, Audrey and Deb as well, Sharon, that, as a former teacher, you do many lockdown drills, you do many of these drills a couple of times a year, but you never expect them to be real. And I can't imagine what those teachers were wondering today, the uncertainty of what was happening outside their classroom doors as they're inside trying to protect those kids and their care, and the children who were sitting in the classroom wondering what's happening outside the walls of their classroom. And now that we've learned that so many children and a teacher have died today, this community is really hurting out here. As I saw today when I first got here around 12:30, when I saw officers walking out of the school building, their faces, these are seasoned officers with tears coming from their eyes, leaving the tragedy inside that school building today. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Vanessa. Vanessa is live there at Robb Elementary School. She has been there for hours and has seen the terror, the panic from law enforcement officers. Again, this has been truly a community-wide effort. You have DPS, you have FBI, you have Uvalde Police, San Antonio Police, Bexar County Sheriff's Office, just an extreme law enforcement presence over there surrounding that area. Again, she had mentioned SAFD Chief Charles Hood was walking in there with community members and families who are truly going through this heartbreaking experience.
And right now we want to get on over to Alicia Nieves. She's at the Uvalde County Fairplex, where we are waiting to get another update from officials. Alicia.
We were relocated here, Audrey, from the Civic Center, where we had been staged since about 2:30 today, and we are awaiting to see if there will be a press conference. We are all ready. All members, all journalists are here, and we hope to be briefed with some new information. The last time I spoke with you guys, we had spoken to some parents who are just saying, right now there are more questions than answers. And we saw that CBS News, for example, they're speaking to parents who know what this feels like. Not too long ago, they interviewed a father who was affected by the Parkland shooting in Florida. And he says, our hearts, some people might say our hearts are with the families, he says, but that doesn't bring them back. We want our children back, and this happening in Uvalde, we've spoken to people who were born and raised here, and they say it's just hard to fathom that something like this could happen here. And we are seeing support from all across South Texas, as you ladies mentioned. When we arrived here, we went to a staging area outside, I believe it was the old library. It was 300 West Main here in Uvalde, and we saw ambulances from different areas of South Texas. You had Utopia Volunteer Fire Department, you had Valverde County EMS, and then you had San Antonio Fire. They were the ones who were in charge of that staging area. So you really had just teamwork going on standby in case those entities were needed to assist in this just terrible tragedy that happened at Robb Elementary School. So that is just another component of what we have been witnessing today, is how all of South Texas, both emergency responders and community members, are coming together to just try and help in any way that they can. You had, for example, out of San Antonio, District 8 Councilman Manny Pelayas. He was on Twitter encouraging everyone to donate blood, and I heard you ladies talking about that as well, about how it can take 20 minutes to make a big difference. So we have a link on KENS5.com with more ways community members can just lend a hand during this really difficult time for Uvalde. We will update you all if we hear any more information on when an upcoming press conference will happen. The school district and members of law enforcement, Uvalde PD, the sheriff's office, they've been really, really vocal on social media. So we hope to hear an update from them soon. Ladies.
As always, thanks so much, Alicia, for that update. And like she mentioned, a lot of people reacting, a lot of local, state, national leaders, including some local school districts. South San Antonio ISD is changing their protocol in response to the Uvalde shooting. They say no backpacks allowed at any campus for the next 2 days. Campus accessibility is limited to parents and guardians with proper identification, and additional safety support will be placed at every campus. Thursday, May 26th, will be a half day for all students as well. And the district is reminding parents, again, Thursday, May 26th, half day. Elementary school ends at 12:20 p.m. in the afternoon. Middle school will get out at 12:45, and the high school and DAEP at 1:10 p.m. So just an update there for you all who attend South San ISD.
All right, let's go to Matt Houston, who is live at Sacred Heart Church that is in Uvalde, the church that Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Sierra mentioned earlier.
Sharon, the prayer vigil will start here in about 15 minutes. In fact, you might be able to see some people going into the church behind me. I'm not sure how good our angle is going to be at the moment. I stepped in a few moments ago just to sort of see what the atmosphere is like inside. There's probably 25 or so people in there, some clearly in prayer, hands folded, knelt on the kneelers in the pews inside the Catholic Church here, some simply in quiet reflection, eyes open, looking back at the cross in the center of the cathedral here in Uvalde. We expect the Archbishop to deliver some sort of address here again in the next 20 minutes or so. The prayer vigil doesn't start for another 15. You heard his message earlier here on KENS 5, talking about looking at each one of these children as people, as victims, but as the next generation of residents here in Uvalde, and remembering their contributions to societal happiness in the area, and pondering that while also remembering a time of tragedy and looking for hope in all of this. And so you can expect that will be part of the message as you see more people entering the church right now. Again, probably 20 to 25 people inside, very quiet, as you can imagine, at Sacred Heart. Of course, there is another prayer vigil on the other side of town at the Church of Christ here in Uvalde. You can imagine, even if they're not in churches, there are a lot of people praying in this community tonight, and always a blessing to see that come together. And Sharon, you've talked a lot about the sense of community here in the last hour or so. This is one way that manifests itself, when people come together and join hands, religious or not, to remember a tragedy and look forward to whatever comes next, and what will be a days-long process trying to determine what happened, how families will respond. So again, a prayer vigil set to begin here in the next 15 minutes or so at Sacred Heart Church. There are people inside. It's quiet, as you can imagine, and I would imagine that will probably stay that way throughout the night. We'll keep you posted as we participate in that and see how folks are reacting to all of this. Sharon.
he had mentioned that prayer service at Sacred Heart Church that starts in about 15 minutes. Earlier, Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Sierra had also mentioned after that prayer, there's also an 8 p.m. Mass that will begin after that.
All right, and Uvalde PD, they just updated us as well. They said they are going to hold a press conference where we're expecting to get more information on this mass shooting at Robb Elementary School. Alicia Nieves is there, but before we get to her and we get to that press conference, we want to go to Henry Ramos, who is at Uvalde Memorial Hospital. He's been speaking with families who have been coming and going from that location, some with injured family members, some searching for family members. We're going to go live to him now.
Yeah, Audrey and Sharon, I mean, I will tell you, this is extremely tough. For all of us and all different corners of Uvalde, speaking to people, and obviously because it's so much emotion, so much that they're going through. And I actually had to take a minute to myself because especially just interviewing that aunt who's still looking for her niece, and it's after 6 o'clock in the evening. I mean, her niece, who's in 4th grade, 10 years old, just went to school today and was looking forward to her softball game today, and she still hasn't been found. We're talking to family members who lost their loved one today. A 10-year-old girl lost her life at this hospital today. 13 children taken in buses and ambulances to this hospital today. We've got healthcare workers inside trying to save them, doing the best that they can, and a small community where, as I've mentioned all day, they probably know these kids and whoever came here in terms of adults. I did speak to a woman who actually was trying to just drop off a letter at the mail, and I respectfully went up to her. I didn't mean to scare her, but I went up right behind her. She turned around, she said, "I just watched you on the air, Henry," and she said, I just live a couple of blocks down. And I said, "I'm so sorry, but as someone who doesn't live here, and a lot of people who do live here and who are here in Uvalde for the first time, what can you tell us?" And she said, "Well, let me tell you that I was actually a secretary at Robb Elementary for more than 20 years. Her husband was a principal at Robb Elementary. Her son used to be a student at Robb Elementary. Robb Elementary, even though she's not from here, is home for her. She's walked those hallways. She knows that school. And to hear that today, that someone went in there and that you had children losing their lives inside a school that she worked for, it's tough." And so I want to play a little bit of what she told me. Take a listen.
That's where I worked. And so it's my school. I consider it, our school. So it's just breaking my heart. It's just breaking my heart. I just didn't ever expect anything like that to happen here in Uvalde. And then the person that did this, he used to go to high school here. He was going to high school here. He was a high school student here.
Right now?
Right now.
Is it just hard to put into words? I can see it in your eyes. You're like...
I couldn't believe it. When I was watching it, I finally said, no, I'm not going to watch anymore. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it anymore. It's just so hard. Like I said, that was where I worked for 25 years. My husband was a principal there. My son went to school there.
Just a candid conversation. You see the raw of emotions, and that's how it's been, and speaking to a couple of grandmothers today, both of them, their grandsons are safe. You have JJ, who was pulled out of the classroom, pulled out of the window from his dad saving other children. You had another 9-year-old who was able to walk out. He was grazed with his leg, speaking to his grandmother, who prayed that her grandson survived, and he did. But as these families rejoice, as these communities, as people in this community, I should say, try to rejoice in the survivors, there's also that heart, because their neighbors, their loved ones, these kids that didn't make it. And so every single person that I've talked to, whether it was in this parking lot across from the hospital, whether it was over the phone, whether it was over Facebook video chat, every single person told me the exact same thing. And it's a message that I keep repeating because I think it bears worth repeating every single time. when you're in a small town and there is tragedy, when there is something that is just ripped from you unexpectedly, this is when this community unites. This is when this community comes together, as we see the Archbishop of San Antonio coming here to a parish here in Uvalde, as we see people now offering prayer services and vigils all over. This is what this town is about. I have reached out to the hospital to see if there's any update about the 13 children that were taken here. We do know that 2 people did die here. I have not received any word, but once I do know, I will of course pass that on to you. If I talk to any more people out here in this community, of course I want to share that with you. This is a difficult job for every single one of us back in the studio and on the ground here, but very important to make sure that we give you, the viewer, you at home, the insight, the tragedy. We tell these stories of this community. Sharon and Audrey.
And Henry, before we let you go, I do want to ask you a question, because you had spoken to a woman earlier. She was looking for her niece. Can you share one more time her name? I know that she's still looking for her. She went to a softball game and she still hasn't been found.
She hasn't, no, Sharon, and thank you for that, because there's so much that's happening. I took a picture on my phone and from her phone, and we want to show you. So Irissa, if we can show that. Yes, this is Liana. She is 10 years old. She is a 4th grader. You can see she's in uniform. I don't know if my phone is a little bit too dark there, but she's a 4th grader. She hasn't been found. Her aunt and her uncle were here at the hospital for several hours as they tried to identify. They went through the identification process here with several other families. The staff here asking, what did your loved one wear to school today? Can you show us any pictures? And at one point, they thought that she passed away, and they went back there, and it wasn't her. And so when I talked to her as she came back to her car, there's so much uncertainty and so much unknown as they're looking for this little girl. And I think it's fair to say that there are so many families in the same boat here, right? There's so many families, as Vanessa's been mentioning, that have been showing up to that scene at Robb Elementary where they're still looking for their loved one. This particular family said they were going to go to the Civic Center. They're not giving up. They want to find that little girl.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Henry, for that update and, that really moving interview. A lot of people probably feel the same way. Shock, no words to put to this terrible, terrible situation. But, right now we want to get back to Alicia Nieves. She's at the Uvalde County Fairplex, where we are waiting for an update from Uvalde PD on this investigation. Alicia.
We're expecting this update to start at 6:30, so we are just minutes away. 3 minutes, we will bring that update to you live. As I mentioned to you ladies earlier, lots of questions about what was the motive in this crime. We heard tips from the governor about whether more than one weapon was in the hands of this 18-year-old from Uvalde who opened fire at Robb Elementary School. So we are hoping to learn a whole bunch more in this press conference, which again is set to begin at 6:30. You can catch that here live on air and online, and then we will bring more updates to you as soon as it is over as well. So ladies, I will keep you posted.
Thanks so much, Alicia.
Yeah, I think we're all wondering, what was this man's motive? What was this 18-year-old Uvalde resident's motive for going in and shooting children at Robb Elementary School? 14 children dead, 1 teacher dead. I mean, I think that is the big question.
Absolutely. And we do know also there was a Border Patrol agent who was injured who was responding to that scene. And like Vanessa said, a lot of those law enforcement agents, they are local and everyone is connected. Like you heard from that former school district employee. She had kids who went there. She worked there. It's such a small town. Everyone is connected and knows someone somehow who's being affected by this situation.
And who do we have next? Okay, we're going to go now live to Troy Kless at the South Texas Blood and Tissue Center.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. We're here where earlier today we saw people that their donations will likely be flipped and turned around in the next 24 hours to be able to send to the Uvalde response. Now, if we do have video real quick, we can show you of the helicopter that launched around 12:30 this afternoon and got to the Uvalde Memorial Hospital within about 45 minutes. So it's a very quick turnaround for them. I spoke with George Eisenhofer about why he's donating and why it was important for him that his blood could help in the response to this tragedy.
I was in the Army. When I was in the Army, they gave blood all the time. That was, Vietnam was going on, and we gave blood a lot. So, but for whatever it's used for. But no, I heard about that Uvalde shooting, and I'm not sure. I didn't hear any of the details on it, but if the blood's needed there, I'm fine with that.
If you want to donate as well, you can go to southtexasblood.org to sign up. And again, in Uvalde, there is going to be an emergency blood drive tomorrow morning from 9 to 1 a.m. And we'll have more details about that as well. Sharon and Audrey.
Thank you, Troy, and thank you to that kind donor who is donating blood at this moment. So we do want to just do a quick recap of what we know so far of the situation of the shooting. So this happened in Uvalde, which is 80 miles west of San Antonio. It happened at Robb Elementary School. Around 12:17, shots fired. It was an active shooter, and all campuses, including the elementary school, went on lockdown. We do know that Uvalde Memorial Hospital received some patients, about 13 students initially, and 2 who arrived were deceased when they received them. University Hospital here in San Antonio also taking care of 2 victims, a 66-year-old woman and a 10-year-old girl who are both in critical condition. We know that about 600 students, is that right, Audrey? 600 students were also were at that elementary school, and right now you're taking a live look at the media conference that's supposed to be happening in a few minutes here. Alicia Nieves is live there. She had shared with us earlier that we are expecting a press conference from Uvalde Police. I would assume the district as well.
Yeah, we're hoping to find out more information. This community's hurting. They want more answers. They want to know more about the shooter, about a motive. But back to, what took place today, we do know that, Uvalde police were the first on scene at this campus that houses 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade students. And like you mentioned, there are about 600 students at that campus. A Border Patrol agent who also responded was injured, but is said to be okay. We do know 2 additional people were transported to BAMC as well. But right now we want to get to Matt Houston, who is at Sacred Heart Church there in Uvalde, where a memorial service is about to take place. Matt.
Yeah, the pews are quickly filling up here in Uvalde, probably a good 50 or 60 people inside the cathedral behind me. We'll give you a look at the doors as you see some more folks strolling in at the moment. Just a few minutes ago, really heartbreaking, an older gentleman came up to us and said his grandson is one of the people in the hospital right now. He showed us a picture from his wallet, a 10-year-old who was at the school at Robb Elementary today. I asked him what he's here to do, and he said, pray hard. So he walked inside, as did several other dozen people who are now quietly sitting in the cathedral waiting for a sort of prayer vigil as the rain starts to fall here in Uvalde. We do expect a mass around 8 p.m. with the Archbishop, but I would imagine it will be a quiet chapel until then, with lots of people in reflection. I mentioned we went in a few moments ago just to sort of get a sense of the atmosphere. Very quiet. Lots of people with their hands folded up against the pews, kneeling, praying. Lots of people just sitting there. We've seen some congregation members walk in with flowers and leave them toward the front of the church near the altar. There's about 6 dozen or so bouquets sitting there right now. Of course, you could smell the incense inside the church. One of the beautiful aspects of Catholicism, and certainly more to reflect on today as you sort of get that feel for the sense inside the church and what things are like. 5 or 6 more people walking in right now. You see some folks outside on their phones. They're trying to stay as up to date on the information as we are, as we give you the developments over the course of the next couple of hours. Again, even people inside with family members impacted by this in the hospital right now And as a community of this size, as we've been telling you all day, everybody knows everybody. And so if they're not personally impacted with a family member in the hospital, their neighbors or co-workers or people that they go to church with, they are impacted. And so it adds some extra weight to the prayers leaving this chapel tonight, and certainly silent reflection at the moment. You can see a couple of people congregated near the doors. We've not heard bells or anything like that, but there's definitely a crowd growing. I'm seeing a couple of other people on the other side of the chapel right now that we can't show you at the moment because of our vantage point, but they're hugging each other, embracing tightly. There will be more of that inside this church tonight, as well as at the other vigil at the Church of Christ on the other side of town. Lots of prayers going up tonight for obvious reasons, as many of these families and friends and parents and students reflect on this situation and this tragedy here in Uvalde, trying to make sense of it. And one obvious place to turn in this time is religion, and you can see many of those people doing just that right now, walking into the Sacred Heart Roman Catholic Church here in Uvalde. Again, we expect the Archbishop will deliver a Mass around 8 p.m. The prayer vigil is set to start really any minute now. It's still quiet inside, and it will probably remain that way even once the service begins. You're going to see a big family walking in right now, one woman carrying a box of tissues. That just speaks to the reality of this situation, and you heard the Archbishop talking a little bit about that earlier. He mentioned remembering each of these victims as a person, not just a number, but a member of this community. And there's no better symbol than that for all of the tragedy and the sadness right now than carrying a box of tissues into the church as you're about to pray for those victims, pray for your family members, pray for your loved ones. And I cannot imagine what the message will be tonight, or even preparing that message, but I know that the Archbishop did a pretty unbelievable job of describing the atmosphere and then finding some hope to hold on to in this sort of situation, as he spoke to Deborah and Sharon a little while ago here on KENS 5. But you can expect he will do everything he can to comfort those members in the audience, and again, remember those victims as people, not just as numbers. And that's something we're going to have to keep in mind over the coming days as this coverage evolves. And obviously that's something that starts tonight. We understand that there is a press conference coming here shortly. We're going to throw it back to the desk at the moment as we sort of wait on leaders to give us an update about what's happening. Guys?
That's right. People, teachers and children, second, third, and fourth graders, some of the youngest innocent lives affected, 14 dead, 1 teacher dead as well, and 13 children injured. We've had 2 adults at BAMC right now injured, fighting for their life. We have 1 woman at University Hospital in her 60s and a 10-year-old girl also fighting for her life at University Hospital.
And as we just heard from Matt Houston, who was live at Sacred Heart Church, the pews are filling up and the community is coming together to lift the families and the parents up in prayer.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we want to go to Henry Ramos right now. Again, he's at Uvalde Memorial Hospital, where he's been speaking with a lot of those families who have been catching up with loved ones who are coming and going, and also looking for some of their family members. Henry?
Yeah, Audrey and Sharon, I mean, it's just a culmination of so many different things. For every family member, it's extremely different. As you mentioned, we spoke to the aunt who's still looking for her niece. I've talked to 2 grandmothers whose both grandsons were in Robb Elementary, and one was shot. He's okay. As I step aside here, though, just to kind of give you, at least to tell you, for those that are watching, and give you an idea of what it looks like outside the hospital, the scene has definitely changed. We've arrived probably, I would say, before 3 o'clock, so we've been here at least for the last more than 3 hours. We had a huge string of law enforcement out here guarding. You can see that's gone. A lot of the staff here that was here earlier in the day has left. As we've seen, we still have just a few family members that are still arriving, but not many. You can see there's one lady in scrubs there that's getting out of her vehicle. But I've heard so many different stories, and one that I haven't shared in a while, but and this is just to give you the context, that insight. Every time, which is so unfortunate when we report on these types of situations, on these mass shootings, we always hear of from loved ones. What did they say when this was all unfolding inside? And so this came from a coach inside Robb Elementary, and she had sent this to all of her loved ones. And I shared this a few hours ago, and I'll share it again for those who are joining us. She had mentioned, and she had sent this to a text to all of her family members, and she wrote, "Someone is shooting at the school. I love you." The last 3 words, "I love you." She sent that to all of her family members, and she, the coach had hid in a bathroom, was able to survive and was able to walk out. You can just imagine the family members that received that text message of their loved one saying, "I love you," not knowing if they were going to make it out. And in this case, she did. And speaking to this loved one who shared this with me, they shared this because they are a member of this town. They grew up here, and they were saying that, in this type of community, in this small farming community, it's just unthinkable. There really is no words, and really the message that they have is just saying that their continued thoughts, their prayers, that's all they ask. And especially at a time right now, I mean, as Sharon and I have been mentioning, in these situations, as us that are on the ground reporting on it, and those of you that are watching, you ask yourself, what can you do in these types of situations? Obviously, we've seen, as Troy has talked about, the critical need for blood donation. We know that there's going to be a blood drive here tomorrow that you don't need to register for. It's happening from 9 to 1. But prayers, I mean, that's the biggest thing. And whether just, if you don't pray, just lift these families in your thoughts. Think about them and the heartache and every situation that is so different. The families that are still searching for these children here into the evening as the sun is now going down here. That heartache and that pain is certainly not going to change, even though as the day progresses here. And as we continue to be here on scene, we're going to be with you all throughout all of this. Our hearts are with you all, and every single one of us here that are back at the station and here on the ground, because this is a tough job. But know that we are here and thinking about you all, because our hearts are heavy, as well as this community of Uvalde. I'm still waiting on a response or any update from the hospital, because the only thing that we do know that they had put out, that 13 children were taken here via school bus, via ambulance, and as well as others were taken here. And we do know that 2 people here didn't make it, and then they had to transfer others to San Antonio hospitals, which I know we've been talking about. Sharon and Audrey.
Thank you so much, Henry, for that update. And yes, we're all feeling it. The city of Uvalde is feeling the pain tonight. And right now, Deborah Knapp joins us again for our continuing coverage on this mass shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde.
Yes, and Audrey, we've just gotten word that Salvation Army is sending a canteen truck to Uvalde to feed the first responders and anyone there who is hurting, which of course is the whole community. And 2 prayer services are underway right now. One is underway at the Church of Christ, the other at Sacred Heart Catholic Church. Archbishop Gustavo is on his way there and will hold a mass at 8 p.m.
And we're also waiting for a press conference. Uvalde Police Department, right there, that's what we're waiting for. They're supposed to come out and speak. And that press conference is being held at the Uvalde County Fairplex. That's where they've moved the staging area to for this evening. Our team is there, Alicia Nieves, and we should be bringing this to you live and, of course, online on KENS5.com. But a lot of unanswered questions that we're hoping possibly we could get more answers this evening.
Yes, we have 3 adults in the hospital right now, all here in San Antonio, 2 at BAMC, 1 at University Health in critical condition, a 10-year-old girl in critical condition here, and then the children who are in the hospital in Uvalde. And we don't know any of their conditions.
No, we don't. We also know a Border Patrol agent was also injured when responding to that scene at around 11:32 this morning. So, luckily that agent is going to be okay, we're learning.
Yes, and these are pictures from Chopper 5 over Robb Elementary School. Now, officially, we have only heard from the chief of the Uvalde, what is the C for?
Consolidated
Independent School District. We've only heard, thank you, Audrey, from him, and it was a very brief 3-minute press briefing that he gave us. and told us very little. So we are waiting to hear more about what happened. Right now at Robb Elementary School, we saw San Antonio Fire Chief Charles Hood walk into the school with some parents, I presume, 14 children killed and a teacher. We believe those bodies are still inside the school. A great big evidence truck pulled up there about an hour ago.
Yeah, and taking a look from the ground, it looks like that scene is still very active as well. Vanessa Croy was there all evening long, still there. They keep pushing that scene back further and further because it is an active investigative scene. Now, we also know that DPS is also involved in this investigation. Earlier, we saw the FBI showed up on scene as well, and of course, the number of local law enforcement agencies who also have traveled to Uvalde to give their assistance in any way that they can. But so unfortunate about the 14 children whose lives were lost, and that one teacher who also lost her lives, and then of course those others that were injured and who are fighting for their life this evening.
Yes, and then some parents, as we know, still looking for their children at this hour. Just heartbreaking that they don't know where they are. Hopefully they'll get word they're with another family. We certainly hope that's the case. All of this unfolding at Robb Elementary School today, and we are told an 18-year-old who is a resident of Uvalde walked into the school at 11:30 and just started shooting and killed 14 students. These students range from 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. And now we're going to go live to the police chief in Uvalde.
Good afternoon. I'm Anne-Marie Espinoza, Executive Director of Communications and Marketing for Uvalde CISD. Please understand, at this time, we come to you to share information. We will be providing a statement and not taking any questions, for the investigation is not complete. This is a tragic time in our district, and we greatly appreciate your patience and understanding. Here to provide a short statement and not take any questions is our Uvalde CISD Chief of Police, Pete Arredondo.
I don't see you. Switch.
Would you like for me to do this again? Let's do this again, Pete.
Sure.
I apologize. I did not realize we were not on, and you probably could not hear what I was saying. I am Anne-Marie Espinoza, Executive Director of Communications and Marketing for Uvalde CISD. This is a tragic time in our district, so please know the investigation is not complete. We will only be sharing a statement with you, not providing questions. We greatly appreciate your patience and understanding. Here to share a statement and not take questions is our Uvalde CISD Chief of Police, Pete Arredondo.
Thank you. Good evening. Again, briefly, as of now, we're still working on this active investigation. Once we're able to provide information to the families, we will do so. First and foremost, obviously, our priorities is to get information to our families and give them some information. So please bear with us in regards to that. Secondly, once we do get some information that we can release to the public, we will be doing that. So please know once we do get some information, we will share that with you and call another press conference. Let me assure you, the intruder is deceased, and we are not actively looking for another individual or any other suspects in this case. We definitely ask you all to keep the families that are involved in your prayers. Thank you so much.
Here to provide a statement and not take any questions is our Superintendent, Dr. Hal Harrell.
Good evening. This was a tragic and senseless event today, and my heart was broke today. Our hearts and thoughts and prayers are with all our families as we go through this day and days to come. A few announcements that we need to make is beginning tomorrow at 10 a.m. we will have grief counseling and support at the Civic Center for our students, our staff, community members, anybody that needs to come at that time. And we may be there more than one day, may be there several days. Our Rob staff will meet at 8 a.m. at the Civic Center as well. We'll begin with visiting with them and seeing what those needs are. School will be closed. The school year's done. We'll have no school tomorrow or Thursday. All activities are canceled throughout the district. No graduation is on people's mind. We will come out with a notice on that at a later time. All the staff members they will report to their campuses, other than Rob campus, which will come to the Civic Center. Again, my heart was broken today. We're a small community, and we will need your prayers to get us through this. Thank you.
Again, this is a tragic event in our community. We are very sorry that we cannot provide you more information, but greatly appreciate your patience and understanding during this very difficult time. We ask that you pray for all of the families affected. Thank you, and be safe.
Okay, so we just heard a press conference. First, we heard from Uvalde UCISD Chief of Police. He didn't really give us too much information. We were hoping for more information on a motive or victims, but he didn't give us too much. But then we did hear from Dr. Hal Harrell, who is the superintendent of UCISD, and he did call this a tragic and senseless event. He said starting tomorrow at 10 a.m. there will be grief counseling services at the Civic Center for students, teachers, staff, or anyone in the community who may need it. They also would like Rob's staff, so that's the teachers and staff, to report there at 8 a.m. at the Civic Center. And as of now, the school year is over for UCISD.
Right. He said graduation will be rescheduled, and all teachers are to report to their campuses, but students, the school year is over. And of course, there'll be grief counseling for everyone in the community and everyone there at the Civic Center, beginning with the Rob school staff. And the school police chief really did not give much information. He said they are still getting information to families. It is an active investigation, and they cannot release any information right now until they speak to the families, which of course we can all understand. And right now we have a confirmation of 14 dead. Children, 14 students, and a teacher.
And right now we also want to go to Victoria De Leon, who's at the Church of Christ there in Uvalde, where a memorial service is being held. Victoria.
Right, Audrey. Yeah, this church just 3 minutes away from Robb Elementary, and they're expecting to have a prayer vigil up until 7:30 tonight. It was, of course, this just last-minute thing. They were planning to have a game night, as they do every week, and then the news came about those 14 children dead and teacher who passed away in the shooting. So they just wanted to be here for the community. And again, they will be here up until 7:30, lending an ear, just praying with the community. So far, we've seen maybe about 10 to 12 people come by, one family with their 2 children who used to go to the elementary school, just wanted to be around the faith community, praying for the rest of her community. We talked to the pastor who used to be a teacher at the high school. So this definitely hits close to home, not just because he's from this community or has lived in this community for a while, but because it's just such a devastating time, and he just wants to be there for the family. So again, that prayer vigil is happening inside the church up until 7:30 tonight. There are a couple of more people who are arriving and are just seeking to be together right now, Audrey.
All right, thank you so much. And now we want to go to Alicia Nieves, who is also there in Uvalde at the scene of that news conference, the Uvalde County Fairplex. Alicia.
I know so many parents, so many of us viewers, right, wanted to know more. But because of the status of this investigation, because there's such a big crime scene to deal with, authorities just couldn't give us a lot of the details that we really wanted to hear about a motive, about how this could happen, so really the details that were given to us today were more logistics for school tomorrow. So what the CISD chief of the Uvalde School District, Pete Arredondo, what he did say was they are working this investigation as much as they can, and they will release any information they possibly can to parents as soon as possible. And he just asks that the community keep Uvalde in their prayers. What I have been noticing, by the way, a lot on social media is that you have entities nationwide that are sharing a graphic that says, our hearts and our prayers are with Uvalde. For example, the San Antonio Spurs reaching out, offering their support on Twitter not too long ago. The superintendent of UCISD says this is just a tragic and senseless event. He says his heart broke today, and he said that in tears. And you have folks from all over the nation who are sharing in these sentiments, just wondering how something like this can happen and how can it happen in Uvalde. The superintendent did also say that tomorrow, 10 a.m., they'll have grief counseling and support for students, teachers, and staff at the Civic Center. The Rob staff, they're going to meet at 8 a.m. tomorrow at the Civic Center. The superintendent says school is over. School will be closed. All activities going forward are canceled. He says graduation just isn't on the mind right now. This is the priority, to get to the bottom of what happened and to reunite as many students as possible with their families. Last I spoke with you ladies, we were talking about how some parents were waiting more than 5 hours to pick up their children who were at other campuses other than Robb Elementary School. So the superintendent also mentioned that they are going to come out with the plans for graduation at a later time, and they will relay as many details as they can with parents as soon as they get them. They've been sharing this on Twitter, on Facebook, and then you have communication from the local police department on Facebook as well. So once again, every leader who stood up there at the podium today, they are just asking for prayers and support for this small community of Uvalde. They're emotional right now. They're trying to get you details at home as soon as they can, but they're just not there yet, and we will stay put until we can learn more and share that with you all. Ladies?
And Alicia, I had a question, because earlier today we had heard that DPS had actually taken over the investigation from Uvalde Police, but I know we've only heard from Pete Arredondo with UCISD. Do you think we're going to hear from DPS anytime this evening?
I haven't heard anything yet, Audrey. I sure do hope so, but you're right. What we have seen, DPS has certainly had a strong presence at every scene that we have gone to today, especially here at these press conferences. You had multiple members of DPS here, but to answer your question, they have not yet announced if they are going to do another one tonight. We tend to find out just shortly beforehand, but we hope so. So you had DPS here, you had the school district police here, and then of course district officials. Once again, the superintendent getting very, very emotional when he took the podium today, and they will share updates as soon as they get them.
Alicia, thank you so much. I know so many questions still. And we are waiting for President Biden. He will be addressing the nation in about 15 minutes. He called the governor about an hour and a half ago, offering whatever support he could. He also ordered that all flags be flown at half-staff in honor of these victims.
And a lot of people wondering what they can do to help, not only with those memorial service, but also anything that they can do to help first responders. We want to go to Troy Kless because he has some answers for the community out there.
Yeah, Audrey, one of the ways that can be immediate help to the victims and to the first responders and healthcare workers taking care of the victims is by donating blood. We came here to the South Texas Blood and Life Tissue Center earlier this afternoon after we learned that 25 total units of blood were sent to the Uvalde Memorial Hospital in wake of the shooting earlier today. Now, they are hoping that they can get more supplies in order to send to them over the next day or two. So we talked with the South Texas Blood and Life Center about the importance of donations, even especially if their supply is rather low right now due to several other factors. It's all the more reason for people to come donate in such a quick amount of time. Take a listen to what they had to say.
We are on standby right now to see if additional units will be needed at this time. We always are in need of blood. As you can see, since the pandemic, we've been struggling to bring in blood donors, to supply blood donations, to supply our hospitals. So if you're seeing this, if you can make it a donation to come in, that'd be greatly appreciated.
That was Roger Ruiz with South Texas Blood and Tissue. So again, just to recap, there are about 15 units of blood that were sent almost immediately after the shooting was reported, and then late in the afternoon, 10 more were sent. So again, if you're interested in donating, it doesn't take very long. It may take you 20 minutes. If you come down here to the South Texas Blood Life Center or even to Memorial Hospital here in San Antonio, they will be taking donations as well. But if you can find the closest center at southtexasblood.org, again, southtexasblood.org, and again, in Uvalde, there will be a blood drive tomorrow morning from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Herbie Ham Activity Center. And again, at this point, when so much is going on right now, this is one way that people can lend their support. We're live here at the South Texas Blood and Tissue Center. Troy Kless, back to y'all.
Thanks so much for that important information, Troy. We're right up at the 7 o'clock hour and still, very active investigation at Robb Elementary School after that mass shooting. So we want to go over what we know so far. We've just been updated by district police and the school district, and what we know is at 11:32 this morning there was an active shooter situation at Robb Elementary School. Robb Elementary School houses 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade students. There were about 600 students on that campus. We learned that around 11:32 that suspect, who has been named Salvador Ramos, 18 years old, a local Uvalde resident, walked in with a gun, possibly another weapon, shooting at the school. Unfortunately, 14 students were killed. One teacher was killed as well, but a lot of other people injured, and we still are waiting to find out their conditions at this time.
Well, San Antonio stepping up as communities all around Uvalde to help. Mayor Ron Nirenberg joins us now on Zoom. Mr. Mayor, who have you spoken to in Uvalde?
Well, we've reached out obviously to the mayor. We have been in coordination with their law enforcement, SWAT, as well as Eagle and Bob Squad. Were on the scene with regard to the emergency and crime investigation. CSI is obviously helping with that. The Texas Rangers are the lead agency with regard to the crime scene investigation. But I will tell you, Deborah, that this is an effort that's going to last for a very long time, because the trauma that's been experienced in and around that community is of unthinkable proportions. And so from everything that community members are doing on donating blood to the work that we're doing with nonprofits, the Area Foundation is working nationally with funds to assist. So there's going to be a lot of work underway to just really help with the initial, which is to help with victims and their families.
Mr. Mayor, we have just gotten word from the state AP that the death toll is now 18. Have you heard anything? 18 children and 3 adults. So the death toll is now up to 21. Have you been in contact with anyone about these numbers?
Just through our local law enforcement. Obviously, we're getting information as it's being pieced together. And the first notice of confirmed deaths came through the governor's press conference. So obviously, this is not. This is still a very dynamic situation, and unfortunately, it means that more families are receiving terrible news. So we have to be mindful of that and give our community an opportunity to grieve and to mourn. They're very much going through the worst right now.
Nirenberg, what kind of resources exactly is the city of San Antonio sending there to Uvalde over the next, days, weeks?
Well, we've said before that whatever Uvalde, and this is my message to the mayor out there and to the community, is whatever Uvalde needs to get through the next few days, and then in the aftermath, we're going to be there to support them. Our nonprofits are going to step up. Our law enforcement and fire department has already been on scene, but this is going to be a long effort to heal and and to really address the impacts that are being felt right now.
Okay, Mayor Nirenberg, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And all that San Antonio is doing, and of course, all the communities all around, trying to help Uvalde in any way that we can.
And just tragic, like Deborah just mentioned, those numbers just went up. 18 children dead, 3 adults. Just heartbreaking. Like the mayor said, more people finding out that their loved one did not make it through this tragedy.
Yes, just tragic. Henry Ramos is in Uvalde. He has been there all day at the hospital there. Henry talking to families as they've come by.
Yeah, Deborah and Audrey, it's a lot of different families, and and as I've been mentioning throughout the day here as the night falls, just trying to be respectful. I mean, I take a big sigh because it's been really tough. There really are no words, and it's tough because a lot of these families all have different stories as we've been playing out, as we've been showing all of you. Some of them showing up, seeing if one of their loved ones are here, if one of the children that from Robb Elementary showed up here. We spoke to an aunt live who was looking for her niece, and she went through the identification process, and that took a toll because, I mean, there's so many families that they have to go through, and they're asking for photos, and they're asking, well, what did they wear to school today? Then you have other families who showed up, and they're speaking to a grandmother, her grandson was shot, and he's okay, and he was able to survive. But then there are plenty of others who have been in tears. And we saw one woman, and she actually hasn't come back to her car. She parked right next to us, who got here, and I mean, she just opened her doors and she just wailed. I mean, and I don't know what news she got, and I wanted to be respectful, and she hasn't been back since. So some families receiving news that they don't want to hear, that their loved one didn't make it. And so it has been different. And just being here at the hospital, I've been trying to communicate with people through social media, trying to get a sense of what happened. And of course, it's hard to even make sense of what happened for all of us. But to get that insight and really, as I shared even from the last time about that text message from a coach inside Robb Elementary saying, "I love you" to all of their family members, not knowing if she was going to make it out, and she did. Or we think of JJ, who was in school, and he was pulled out of the classroom by his dad. We think of the 9-year-old who was shot in the leg and said it was fireworks that were going off. That's what it sounded like. They were scared, all huddled together inside a classroom. We think about that this was the time that these students were about to finish the school year. And we know through these unprecedented times, school is tough. I mean, the teachers. But, as I've been here, I've also reported on our healthcare workers, the heroes, the nurses, the doctors, all the staff right across the street here at Uvalde Memorial Hospital, having to treat their neighbors, perhaps their loved ones. And I still cannot just get that image of that nurse who walked across the street in her blue scrubs and getting in her car, opening the door and just bawling, just taking a moment just to sit there and just to cry. Or talking to the husband of a nurse who said he wasn't able to talk to his wife much today, but the only thing that she said is that it was a nightmare. But they know that they have a job to do, and that's what continues to happen here. I have not received any word of any sort of update in terms of the injury. Obviously, we just received word of what the AP is reporting now that the death toll has risen to 21, 18 children and 3 adults. This is very much a fluid situation, folks, and we're trying to give you the best insight in the context that we can respectfully. But I've said this before, but really every single person that I've talked to, they just ask for prayers, and we cannot say that enough. But that's really what they're asking for right now, in this small town of Uvalde.
All right, Henry, thank you. And I do want to share with you the information that we have just received from the Associated Press. As we've been saying, the death toll has risen to 18 children killed and 3 adults killed. 3 adults are also in serious condition. The federal law enforcement officials expect that death toll may even climb. The gunman entered Robb Elementary School in Uvalde with a handgun and possibly a rifle. Officials did not immediately reveal a motive, but the governor has identified the assailant as Salvador Ramos, said he was a resident of Uvalde. Now, a Border Patrol agent, this is new information, who was nearby when the shooting began, rushed into the school without waiting for backup and shot and killed the gunman, who was behind a barricade. This, according to a law enforcement official speaking on the condition of anonymity. The agent was wounded, and we had heard that earlier, was wounded but able to walk out of the school, law enforcement officers say. So that Border Patrol agent who was wounded is rushed in without any backup and shot and killed Ramos, the gunman, who now we know has killed 18 children and 3 adults.
Well, that Border Patrol agent, a hero.
A hero.
A hero. Think about how many other lives he saved. And we did also hear from the school district. UCISD Superintendent Dr. Hal Harrell did update us on, processes for the next few days for the school district. He called this a tragic and senseless event. He said at 10 a.m. tomorrow, there will be grief counselors at the Civic Center, not only for students, but parents, staff, as well as community members. They welcome everyone there who needs the help. And Robb staff of that elementary school, they are to report there to the Civic Center at 8 a.m. because, of course, Robb Elementary School is still a very active investigation scene. And, of course, UCISD, the school year is over, he said, for the school district. Children will not need to report to school. Graduation is on hold. They will let those seniors know at a later date when that will be held, but really that's not on the minds of anyone right now, he said. And the teachers who are at the other campuses, other elementary school, other high school, junior high, they're to report to their campuses tomorrow. So there's an update from UCISD as well.
And we are showing you aerial pictures from Chopper 5 of Robb Elementary School, the scene of horror today and continuing horror this evening. San Antonio Fire Chief Charles Hood is inside the school. We saw him walking in with parents, law enforcement inside the school where we presume many of the victims are still inside. And it is an active crime scene investigation. The police in Uvalde, the school police, they don't want to release information now until all of the families have been notified. Just terrible to think that some families still don't know.
A lot of families still searching for children, which is horrifying. But we also did hear that the Texas Rangers, DPS, FBI, all there on scene, as well as a number of local law enforcement. But the only police department that we've heard from in those press conferences has been UCISD Chief of Police Pete Arredondo, and of course the school district superintendent.
Right. We've only heard from the school district police, not from the sheriff or Uvalde police there. And we've been told DPS is heading that up, and then the Texas Rangers are conducting the forensics there at the school.
Yeah, so just a very sad situation. We also have several memorial services being held right now at Sacred Heart Catholic Church. There is one being held currently, and then at 8 p.m. there will be another mass across town at Church of Christ. There's another memorial service being held. We have crews at both of those scenes. They say a lot of people from the community just, looking to lift those victims up in prayer.
Yes, and the Archbishop Gustavo, is in Uvalde right now. San Antonio doing all it can to help. SAPD, Bexar County Sheriff's Office. We just heard from Mayor Ron Nirenberg, who's been in contact with officials there in Uvalde, offering whatever we can to that community of 16,000 people to help in any way that we can. The American Red Cross said they were sending the Salvation Army, rather, sending a canteen to help feed all the first responders who've been there all day long, probably without food or much to drink, on the scene helping.
Absolutely. And we saw earlier today all flags were to be flown at half-staff on order of the president, we are waiting to hear from just shortly here. And he also extended a hand of help to Governor Abbott in any way that he can for this small Texas community.
Yes, and the flags are all lowered, and we're expecting the president in about 2 minutes to address the nation on this terrible, terrible tragedy that's happened here in Texas, in a community just 80 miles west of San Antonio.
And you know, our neighboring communities, they're not unfamiliar with this type of tragedy. We had Sutherland Springs, you know, which is still very fresh for a lot of people, and we've seen how that really affected that small town and how those family members are still grieving. So we can only imagine how these families are going to be feeling, and the community is just hoping to wrap their arms around them with, you know, these different memorial services, because they said, you know, what else can we do but lift them up in prayer? And we heard from Henry Ramos, that's what a lot of these people are just asking for, just lift them up in prayer. And if you want to do something physically to help, the Blood Center, the South Texas Blood Center is also asking for donations of blood. They could use them for those victims, or there's always a shortage. And even tomorrow in Uvalde, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., there will be a blood drive at Herbie Ham Activity Center. If you feel the need to help, there's one way you can do it.
Yes, that is a very concrete way you can help. San Antonio has also sent 25 liters of blood there to the hospital to help. 13 children were taken there wounded to help with that, but they do need more blood. We have 4 people being treated here in San Antonio, a 66-year-old woman and a 10-year-old girl at University Health, both in critical condition. 2 other adults are being treated at BAMC, and we do not know their condition.
Yes, but we do know that, again, that death toll has been updated. 18 students, 3 adults, 21 total. Just that number just takes your breath away.
It does. And those 18 children between the 2nd grade and 4th grade, you know, we're talking about 7 to 10-year-old children. Just horrible.
Terrible, terrible. Columbine, we know that there was 15 deaths in Columbine.
I can't remember the exact number. Of course, that. Okay, we've just gotten word. Vanessa Croy has an update for us in Uvalde from DPS. Vanessa?
Deborah, we're here with Lieutenant Chris Olivares with DPS. He is going to tell us a little bit more about what he's learned that happened out here at Robb Elementary today. And Lieutenant Olivares, we've just learned that 18 students have been killed.
Right, Vanessa. So first I want to acknowledge the brave men and women of law enforcement that showed up to the scene, that actually were involved in the scene, that actually made entry into this school and saved more lives. That, of course, we lost 18, but I want to praise those brave men and women of law enforcement. Also, offer our condolences on behalf of Texas Department of Public Safety to the families, to the victims, and the entire Uvalde community. So what we do know now that the suspect was involved in a family disturbance earlier on the day with his grandmother, in which he shot his grandmother. From that point on, what we do know is that local law enforcement received a call of a crash and a man with a gun nearby where the school's at. At that point, local law enforcement responded to the school. The suspect made entry into the school, and as soon as he made entry into the school, he started shooting children, teachers, whoever was in his way. He was shooting everybody. We had, of course, as I mentioned, brave law enforcement made entry into that school, exchanged gunfire with a suspect who was wearing body armor. Several police officers were shot. At that point, we did have a tactical law enforcement team arrive on scene. They made entry. They were also met with gunfire by the suspect, but they were actually able to shoot the suspect, and now the suspect is deceased. As of right now, we do have 18 children confirmed that are deceased, as well as 2 adults, one of those being a teacher from the school.
And we've also heard word that a Border Patrol agent was struck with gunfire, a few officers shot. We've heard that some law enforcement officers actually went into school to get their kids out. Can you talk about that?
Right, so what we do know, Vanessa, right now that there was some police officers, families trying to get their children out of the school because it was an active shooter situation right now. It's a terrible situation right now. And of course, just as we mentioned, the loss of life, it's just terrible. It's a terrible tragedy now that took place. But again, we got to keep acknowledging those brave men and women that actually were there on scene that met this suspect. And of course, we know that they were met with gunfire. Some of them were shot. But at the end of this, the suspect was shot and is now deceased. The threat is now neutralized.
And we're hearing his home was less than a mile away from here. Did you find any other guns, any other ammunition? We've heard maybe a backpack in the school or at his home.
So what we do know right now, Vanessa, is that the suspect was armed with a long rifle. We are working with ATF, FBI, multiple law enforcement agencies here on scene, trying to determine what kind of weapon this individual had, how he obtained it, and also what the motives were, if any, behind this mass shooting.
And we've seen parents out here the last few hours wondering where their children are. Have you been able to notify all the parents?
We have local law enforcement out working with the families, contacting the families as well. Also those that have lost children. We do have some type of victim services involved as well to try to meet with these families and comfort them in this time of need right now. So I think we're now as a community that we need to acknowledge this and have prayers for these families, these victims that are lost right now.
Where does the investigation go now?
So it's still an active investigation. We have multiple agencies. Texas Rangers right now are the lead investigators for this shooting, as well as working with FBI, ATF as well. So it's a multiple agency investigation right now. And we will provide updates as we receive them.
All right. Thank you, Lieutenant. We appreciate your time today. And there you have an update. 18 children died in the shooting today, including one teacher out here at Robb Elementary. We'll have more updates later on in the show. Deborah, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. And then we know of the teacher and 2 other adults who were killed in addition to the 18 children. And we just heard there from the DPS officer about how they approached the gunman with a tactical squad. And of course, we already heard that the Border Patrol agent who rushed in without backup and was shot in the leg, and he also opened fire on the gunman, who was armed, we've just learned, with a long rifle.
Yes, and that suspect, Salvador Ramos, 18-year-old, said to be a local there in Uvalde, of course, again, killed by that DPS Border Patrol agent who showed up there on the scene when he heard what was going on. He quickly just went and, did what they're trained for, to try and help save lives, and he did. He took that shooter down.
Well, as you said, a true hero.
Yes.
A true hero. Running into gunfire like that and saving lives.
And right now we are still waiting on President Biden, who was expected to speak to the nation here in just a few minutes. We are waiting. He did earlier today order all flags to be flown at half staff in remembrance of those 21 lives lost there in Uvalde at Robb Elementary School.
And right now we do not know where he opened fire. Whether it was in the classroom, whether it was in the gym. We do know a 10-year-old girl was killed, another 10-year-old girl is in critical condition, a 9-year-old was injured. So, that's all 4th grade students. And a father went and broke a window and was pulling out 4th graders out of one of the rooms. So I don't know if the gunman was in that area or someplace else.
But it's amazing, all these law enforcement officers who live in that community, and I'm sure it's hitting close to home. And when they hear that over the scanners, or they get those reports, they were like, let me jump into action. This is what we're trained for, and how great that is that they were able to pull some of those kids to safety.
Yes.
All right, and we lost our look right now at Robb Elementary School, but there are some different memorial services going on. Sacred Heart Catholic Church is having one right now, and we want to go to Matt Houston, who is there at that service.
Audrey, still an active investigation. You just heard the update there from DPS about sort of the way these events unfolded today. We know that the shooter had a long rifle and was quickly taken down, but unfortunately was able to get into the school that you see behind me and take, now we know, 20 lives, and including one life from earlier today. So obviously a rather massive death toll in a tragic situation that just gradually gets worse and worse the more we learn about it. As we mentioned, the investigation's still ongoing. We know that they're looking for anything around the area. It appears the shooter was only a couple of blocks away, lived only a couple of blocks away, and so we don't know a whole lot about motive at this point. We don't know exactly how these events unfolded, aside from the fact that he was able to get into the school and open fire. And that's unfortunately the headline here in Uvalde, Texas. Obviously tragic news, and that death toll gets a little bit higher. You can kind of see some behind me here at Robb Elementary. There are a number of officers, law enforcement, walking around a little bit, just sort of taking the lay of the land at the moment. I'm going to step out of the shot and give you a look right now at Robb Elementary. You can see the welcome sign there at the front. It looks like some folks in suits walking around trying to do more of the same and just take in what they can see at the moment, get a better understanding for the sense here, as well as the lay of the land and the events in what sequence they happened earlier today. We brought you lots of updates on this one. We, of course, kept you up to speed about the patients in San Antonio being treated there. And we're working to learn more about the condition of the other people who were taken to the hospital as we speak right now. We're going to keep you posted. Of course, we are waiting for more comments from the president as reaction pours in from lawmakers across the United States, of course, including the state of Texas and some of our local officials as well. But all eyes are going to be on the White House tonight to see what President Joe Biden has to say about this. For now, we'll send it back to you guys at the desk.
Matt, earlier, about an hour ago, we saw San Antonio Fire Chief Charles Hood go into the school with what appeared to be some parents. Have you seen any families going into the school? Have you seen anyone coming out?
Not at this point right now, Deb, and we just got here about 15 minutes ago. But right now, everyone sort of seems to be gathered around the perimeter of the building. We have asked to speak with Chief Hood. We are sort of waiting on trying to understand what his schedule is going to be like and what he's doing at the moment. But no, Deb, everybody seems to be outside the building at the moment, including some of the law enforcement officials who you might be able to see walking behind me at the moment, all sort of gathered talking to each other. There's not a dramatic sense of urgency at the moment, just sort of rehashing the events of today, I'm sure. Deb?
All right, Matt, thank you. And we do want to clarify, 18 children killed, 3 adults. One of those adults, a teacher. One we think is the gunman's grandmother, the 18-year-old's grandmother, and the third is the gunman. Those 3 adults.
And we are still waiting for President Biden to speak on the tragedy in Uvalde. We're expecting him to speak any minute now, around 7:30. We're hoping to hear from him. But for now, I want to give you an update again from UCISD. They spoke a little bit earlier about the process, what's going to take place in the district in the next few days. So they said right now the school year is done for all of the students, and they are expecting grief counselors at 10 a.m. tomorrow at the Civic Center. But we also want to go out to Henry Ramos, who has been at Uvalde Memorial Hospital for the last few hours. Henry, anything new on those injured?
Yeah, Audrey and Deborah,
we can try
not
and maybe
so much. I've been reaching out to the hospital and I haven't heard anything yet. The only thing that which we do know that we have been reporting is the 13 children that have been brought here. I can tell you things are a lot quieter here at the hospital than what we've seen since I've been out here since after 2:30 this afternoon. We actually don't see law enforcement presence on this side. We had some family members that were parked across the street, which is where we're located. Some have been arriving, but really there's not many left here in the parking lot. But of course, throughout the afternoon, just talking to people who have been arriving, and it's just been a tell of different stories with them as we await, of course, for President Biden to join us and to address the nation, rather. So speaking with these people, I mean, some of them, as we've heard, they're still looking for their loved ones, for some of the children there at Robb Elementary School. And then we still have some that are celebrating in the sense, if you can't even say that word, that their loved one survived. I mean, speaking to a grandmother who said her grandson was just grazed in the leg, was able to walk out with police officers. You had another grandmother whose grandson was pulled out of the window from his own father, her son-in-law. But then, of course, you know, as speaking with these grandmothers and some of the residents here that have showed up even just to look at the hospital and just pray, because that's what this community is about. I mean, some just had no connection here. They have a connection in the sense that this is their community. And so they just came out here just to look at the hospital, and they just said, you know, if that's what I can do as of right now, then I'm going to come here and pray. And that's what some people have done. Even speaking with the former secretary of Robb Elementary, she was a secretary there for over 20 years. Her husband was a principal there. She had a son that went there. She said that's home for her, a place that she used to walk those hallways. And just interviewing her, she was so shaken up. And I know we showed her interview not too long ago, but she was so shaken up and was hard to even just tell me, you know, of what she's feeling as she lives just 3 blocks away here from the hospital. She said, Henry, this is hard for us, and it's really tough. And it's that emotion, it's that heartache that every single person is going through, as I keep bringing up, because I think it's important, folks. There's so many different aspects, so many factors to this story that is extremely heartbreaking when we think about the healthcare workers, these doctors, these nurses. A small town, they know that the people that they're treating, the children that they're treating, the adults that they're treating. The last thing that the Uvalde Memorial Hospital has updated us, and they've been updating on their social media platforms, as they've been pushing the blood donation drive, which is set to take place here from 9 to 1. I know my colleague Troy Kless has been addressing that. You don't have to register for that. That's the other part that this community is asking for besides prayer, is for blood donations. They certainly need it right now. As I mentioned a while back, there was a board of director meeting that was supposed to take place here at the hospital. That has since been canceled. But we haven't heard anything else, and I have reached out to them to see if there's any latest update in terms of total count of how many patients we do have here right now at the hospital. That's something that I'm not aware of. But I even had a viewer come up and told me, Henry, this hospital is fairly new. It's only about a couple of years old in terms of this building that we're looking at. But they said that, if there were something to happen here, they're going to get the best care here from these doctors and from these nurses here. The sad part about it is that, as I've mentioned, is that they're treating children. They're treating, their loved ones, perhaps family members, friends of family members that they grew up with, as this elementary is not far away from here, and especially with the new death toll that we received, even more gut-wrenching to report on. But a lot of different stories out here, and a lot of different heartache. But again, the single message that I keep hearing and I keep repeating, they just ask for prayers, and they say that through this tragedy, through this unthinkable time, unimaginable time, they're going to unite even stronger.
All right, Henry, thank you. And of course, the community terribly shaken by all of this in the schools, and there will be grief counselors at the Civic Center tomorrow. At least tomorrow, and as the school district superintendent said, for as long as they're needed for people there.
And so many people, like Henry said, pulling together for the community of Uvalde. Just doing a quick scroll on Facebook, Southwest ISD, we stand with Uvalde ISD, Uvalde strong. We have the Houston Astros sending out their thoughts and prayers. We also have Brewster County, the American Red Cross, just so many, wrapping their arms around this small South Texas community.
Yes, and the president called the governor today to offer any kind of support possible from the federal government. This is a picture of President Biden on Air Force One. He was flying today and placed the call to the governor. And we were told that as soon as he got back to the White House, he was going to pull himself together, and he will be addressing the country any moment now.
Yes, and he did order all flags at half-staff in remembrance of those victims and those affected there in Uvalde, and all of those at Robb Elementary School.
Yes, and we've seen that already, all the flags that have been lowered throughout our area and across the country now.
And some more updates for those who do attend UC ISD. The superintendent, Dr. Hal Harrell, did say it was a tragic, senseless event that happened today, and he was totally heartbroken. Again, Robb's staff is to report to the Civic Center at 8 a.m. tomorrow because, of course, the school is still a very active investigative scene. Graduation is on hold. It will not be happening till a later day. Now, the school year is over for all students of UC ISD, but all the other teachers are to report to their other campuses, and then they will go from there.
I know, at the school year, we were right at the end, and now the school, of course, is over in Uvalde.
A lot of people also showing up at different memorial services across town. Sacred Heart Catholic Church is having a memorial service right now, as well as the Church of Christ.
And as we've been saying, prayers like that are so important. So is blood. And Troy Kless is live at the Blood and Tissue Center, which has sent 25 liters of blood to Uvalde. Troy.
Yeah, that's right, Deborah. And we did also get some new information within the past 15 minutes. We've been telling you that tomorrow there will be a blood drive in Uvalde, and we were told that appointments for that have already been filled up at this point. So obviously people are responding and trying to do anything they can to help in the wake of this tragedy. So you mentioned that 25 units of blood that were sent to Uvalde earlier today. Well, about 15 were sent to the actual site at Robb Elementary School and to nearby hospitals almost immediately after, 45 minutes after they got the call to respond to it. They were able to get blood over there. And then later in the afternoon, an additional 10 units were sent to local hospitals as well. So here we got the chance to talk to people who are donating blood that will likely be turned around and sent to Uvalde within the next 24 hours as well. So that is why the South Texas Blood and Life Center is encouraging people to continue donating as well. So again, you can either go to southtexasblood.org or again to a local hospital, and you might be able to donate blood there as well. So like we just mentioned though, there's been a tremendous response to this. The blood drive that's going to be happening at the community center in Uvalde tomorrow has already been booked up with appointments. That is going to be happening from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. What we're told. It's going to be another show of support that the community of Uvalde is going to need in a physical and also emotional and spiritual way that will certainly be appreciated as they continue to recover from this tragic shooting. Deborah?
All right, thank you very much, Zach. And we've also just gotten an update from University Health. They are now treating 3 people there.
Yes, so like we knew earlier, a 66-year-old woman still in critical. We have a 10-year-old girl still in critical, but we've just learned there is another 10-year-old who is said to be in good condition right now at University Health. And there were also 2 people transferred to BAMC there in San Antonio.
Okay, and we now want to go to Victoria De Leon. She is in Uvalde at a prayer service at Church of Christ. Victoria.
Yes, Deborah, we are here at the Getty Street Church of Christ, right off of Main Street and Getty Street, just 3 minutes away from Robb Elementary. That prayer vigil is going to be going on up until 7:30 tonight, although there still are about a dozen people inside praying with that outreach minister that we were able to talk to earlier today. He says this is just an opportunity for people, if you have nowhere to go to be with other people, this is one place that you can come tonight. He is absolutely heartbroken as well. He used to be a teacher at the high school. There was also a mother here with her daughter who is a senior at Uvalde High School, absolutely devastated after today's news. But we did speak to one other person who says being around people does help. And again, that outreach minister says they are here if you need them. Here's what he had to say.
If you don't have anywhere else to go, if you're not already going somewhere where you can be encouraged by others, Getty Street Church of Christ is a real church family.
So during these very difficult times, it's hard to be hopeful, and that's what they are here for, to help people through this very, very tragic time. And this is one of just a couple of different prayer vigils happening tonight, and I'm sure throughout the week there will be more to come. So we'll be following those as well, as these events are just going to be very crucial towards the healing process for this community.
All right, Victoria, thank you so much. Well, we are waiting to hear from President Biden. As we saw earlier, he was on Air Force One returning to Washington, D.C. today. He did issue a proclamation honoring the victims of the tragedy in Uvalde, Texas, and I want to read just part of that proclamation. As a mark of respect for the victims of this senseless act of violence perpetrated on March 24th, 2022 by a gunman at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, by the authority vested in me as President of the United States, I hereby order the flag of the United States to be flown at half-staff. So you will be seeing that all over the country now in honor of these victims, which that death toll has risen in the last hour to 18 students, 3 adults. That does include the gunman.
Yes, and those two other adults, a teacher and the suspected grandmother of the shooter. And we do know the president also was on a phone call with Governor Abbott, extending any assistance that he could to the community of Uvalde and, of course, to the state of Texas. And like you said, Deborah, we are still waiting to hear from the president to speak on this tragedy. But this is a live picture right now of the White House, of the podium there, where we're waiting to hear from President Biden on this tragedy in Uvalde.
Yes, and it looks like they're getting set up right there for that, getting their camera shot ready and doing the mic check. But the President of the United States, on this very sad occasion, talking about these lives lost here in Texas, another senseless act of violence.
Absolutely. But we did hear from the superintendent earlier, who also called this a tragic and senseless event. We've been hearing from an outpouring of state and local officials. We heard from Mayor Ron Nirenberg, who said they will be assisting in any way they can. We also heard from County Judge Wolf, who says they're sending support and materials. One of those agencies, he said, was the coroner's office. Will be sending some assistance down there to Uvalde.
And the San Antonio Fire Chief, Charles Hood, is down there, along with EMS units from our city, and Bexar County has sent, from the Sheriff's Department, they've sent units as well. And this is still a very active investigation at the school. It has been evolving all day. DPS was the lead for a while, but we just heard just a short time ago that the Texas Rangers have now taken over as lead investigators in this horrific crime.
And it's not just those agencies, there's also a number of other local agencies, and even a delegation from the Salvation Army is headed down there, and they're offering assistance to first responders, whether that be, food or drink or even just emotional, because, they've seen a lot today. It's been a hard day for everyone.
And I'm sure the Ecumenical Center here will be sending counselors there. I know they sent them down to Sutherland Springs to be able to work with the children and the adults, but especially the children who have gone through so much trauma. As Henry Ramos talked to one grandmother who said her grandson just said it sounded like fireworks, and he suffered an injury in the leg. We don't know if the gunman was in his classroom or if a bullet came through a wall, but he was injured. He's okay. But these children are definitely going to need someone to talk to, someone to help them understand something that we, even as adults, can't understand.
Absolutely. And those were 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade students who go there to Robb Elementary School. That's what that campus houses. These are young children and a number of staff members. And, we heard from DPS earlier. They did say it was a Border Patrol agent who actually was just responding. He heard it come over his radio and did not wait for backup. He went. He said, they said he approached. He saw the shooter, who was, kind of backed up behind something, and he fired, killing Salvador Ramos, that 18-year-old shooter who did enter with a long rifle, which we heard from DPS. They did confirm that.
Yes, and with a single gun, he was able to kill that many people. Here comes President Biden and his wife, Dr. Jill Biden.
Good evening, fellow Americans. I had hoped when I became president I would not have to do this again. Another massacre, Uvalde, Texas, an elementary school. Beautiful, innocent, 2nd, 3rd, 4th graders. And how many scores of little children who witness what happened see their friends die as if they're on a battlefield, for God's sake. They'll live with it the rest of their lives. There's a lot we don't know yet, but there's a lot we do know. The parents who will never see their child again, never have them jump in bed and cuddle with them. Parents who will never be the same. To lose a child is like having a piece of your soul ripped away. There's a hollowness in your chest. You feel like you're being sucked into it and never going to be able to get out. Suffocating. And it's never quite the same. It's a feeling shared by the siblings and the grandparents and the family members and the community that's left behind. Scripture says, Jill and I have talked about this in different contexts, in other contexts. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. So many crushed spirits. So tonight, I ask the nation to pray for them, give the parents and siblings the strength in the darkness they feel right now. As a nation, we have to ask, when in God's name are we going to stand up to the gun lobby? When in God's name we do what we all know in our gut needs to be done? It's been 3,448 days, 10 years since I stood up at a high school in Connecticut, a grade school in Connecticut, where another gunman massacred 26 people, including 20 first graders at Sandy Hook Elementary School. Since then, there have been over 900 incidents of gunfires reported on school grounds. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Santa Fe High School in Texas. Oxford High School in Michigan. The list goes on, and the list grows when it includes mass shootings at places like movie theaters, houses of worship, as we saw just 10 days ago at a grocery store in Buffalo, New York. I am sick and tired of it. We have to act. And don't tell me we can't have an impact on this carnage. I spent my career as a senator and a vice president working to pass common sense gun laws. We can and won't prevent every tragedy, but we know they work and have positive impact. When we passed the assault weapons ban, mass shootings went down. When the law expired, mass shootings tripled. The idea that an 18-year-old kid can walk into a gun store and buy 2 assault weapons is just wrong. What in God's name do you need an assault weapon for except to kill someone? Deer aren't running through the forest with Kevlar vests on, for God's sake. It's just sick. And the gun manufacturers have spent 2 decades aggressively marketing assault weapons, which make them the most and largest profit. For God's sake, we have to have the courage to stand up to the industry. Here's what else I know. Most Americans support common sense laws, common sense gun laws. I just got off a trip from Asia, meeting with Asian leaders. And I learned of this while I was on the aircraft. And what struck me on that 17-hour flight, what struck me was these kinds of mass shootings rarely happen anywhere else in the world. Why? They have mental health problems. They have domestic disputes in other countries. They have people who are lost. But these kinds of mass shootings never happen with the kind of frequency they happen in America. Why? Why are we willing to live with this carnage? Why do we keep letting this happen? Where in God's name is our backbone to have the courage to deal with it and stand up to the lobbies? It's time to turn this pain into action for every parent, for every citizen in this country. We have to make it clear to every elected official in this country. It's time to act. It's time for those who obstruct or delay or block the common sense gun laws. We need to let you know that we will not forget. We can do so much more. We have to do more. Our prayer tonight is for those parents lying in bed and trying to figure out, will I be able to sleep again? What do I say to my other children? What happens tomorrow? May God bless the loss of innocent life on this sad day. And may the Lord be near the brokenhearted and save those crushed in spirit, because they're going to need a lot of help and a lot of our prayers. God love you.
Will you go to Texas, sir? Sir, will you go to Texas?
President Biden addressing the nation after the massacre today at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. 18 children and a teacher killed.
Also killed, the suspect and a woman believed to be his grandmother. Prayer vigils are underway in Uvalde at this hour.
We have crews in Uvalde at those services and the hospital where 13 wounded children were taken. We will have a complete wrap-up for you tonight on Eyewitness News at 10. We now return you to programming.